Start with the approval of the agenda.
Make a motion.
Second.
Anybody see any changes? It looks pretty straightforward. Changes then, okay. All those in favor then, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of the minutes from our last.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
See. Those in favor then, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Public comment. Do we have anybody? There was only Doug was upstairs and he said he didn't have any.
Yeah, we have no public comment in the West Conference Room.
Okay. Anybody on phones or anything?
No, sir.
None?
None.
Hey, well, that'll help. 5 comes up. Do you have any conflict of interest? Have any other supervisors here? 6. Start out with Chad with the budget. For 7.
Yeah, so last meeting, I gave everybody the department workbooks, their department budgets, and now everybody's got the full budget. Also included in that were the additional funding requests. You have the full list, but you also have the ones related to your committee. For Parks and Trails, you had the addition of the playground equipment at D.D. Kennedy Park, and the replacement of playground equipment at Lotus Lake, and paving the gravel parking lot at D.D. Kennedy Park. So for land and water, you had a $10,000 recurring line for funding for conservation and groundwater protection program, a new line funding. So those are the additional funding requests the administrator forwarded to the committee for review and recommendation. You guys want to do with it, so those are for you guys to consider adding to the budget, as well as anything else that you want to add to the budget at this time.
So we also have, don't we, Bob, that flyover? Is that in this?
LiDAR, I think that'll come, we'll have that on the agenda the next meeting.
For the budget.
Or isn't that for ARPA?
I think that's part of ARPA.
That's part of the ARPA one, or it could be whatever. I mean, it's.
And it was not on the budget or the optional for you. You could make an amendment.
Okay. To add that.
We were going to consider it in ARPA.
Okay. That's under that one. All right.
As the administrator stated last night, anything you add, the budget is presently balanced within the levy dollars. So anything you add at this point has to come from another funding source outside.
Like the playground equipment, that doesn't come out of the parks and deal from the sale of the lime quarry, isn't it?
That's all for the trail plan and that kind of thing, which general government has now allocated the full amount of that to the PTAC projects. That money's now fully allocated.
Okay, so that money's gone.
Yes. And I think Mo's got further information on the additional funding requests.
Got some examples for you. So you can see
Oh.
what we're looking at for playground equipment.
Stuff. Let's take a look, see if we want to move it forward.
I think Mr. Rowdy had something.
Oh, yes, sir.
I asked this last time, Chad, and I just wasn't clear if it was at this meeting or the November meeting about increasing the funds for kinship, but that's not even on the budget. So it's hard to increase something that isn't there.
It is on the budget. It's on the outside agencies, on your outside agencies form. So kinship is now housed with museum, Fair Society, West Cap. All the outside agencies are Department 13 in your budget book, and the kinship line is in there on that form.
Is that the 37,000?
We asked for
I think, because this is just the day after from last night, I think the next meeting is probably what I thought you guys would say. Do we, as a committee, want to recommend any amendments?
that's fine. I just didn't want to miss out.
But yeah, but you
So
could
we should
make,
get the information today and kind of look at it, then that's what we'll try to amend to do different things. Is that how it's kind of going to be?
you can do that way. Right.
Get the information today so that we all have the same. Then at the next meeting, we can decide if we're going to.
We got the information last night.
Got the information, but we didn't get the process, and I mean, it's only been 10 hours.
But as far as the deep dive information, I think Mo's got some stuff.
Yeah,
But you guys do have the benefit of 2 meetings where nobody else.
sure. Okay, so that's, because, yeah, I seen the kinship one was in there for like 37,000.
Yeah, it's
Was that a contract thing or something that had to be straightened out, or what was that?
well, I mean, it's always been housed within community services. That's where they've been paying it out of. What we did is we moved it to an outside agency, treated it like the other outside agencies. That way oversight shifts to the general government.
Reason I'm asking, because it used to be over 100,000 and now it's down at what, 34?
34, 37.
Yeah, something in
38.
there. I'd like to see if we could.
Yeah.
The others were taken away and I don't know why.
I think they started getting funding from other sources too, more funding from other, listening to her talk.
Yeah,
It sounded like their funding, even if it stayed the same, they were still going to be able to do what they are doing
Right, I
today.
understand that, but it's an important program and I was
Yeah.
just thinking that we should work our way back to where it was. That's my thinking.
It'd be nice to know what that gets us then, or gets them. I mean, if they have more funds, does that mean?
more kids.
Yeah,
they can
more
take care of,
kids,
Yeah, probably.
Well, I don't know. From what she said, it sounded like they had the right staff and stuff to take care
They
of
were
what they're
full,
doing.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to get mentors and stuff. All right. What do you got for us?
Just a real quick update, before we get to the funding request. Currently, the snowmobile trail, the snowmobile club will be on the Stour next week, brushing that back, getting ready for sleds to come on frozen ground. That's moving forward. It's been going well with the horses on there. Actually seen a lot more activity on the Stour trail, both, walkers and bikers seem to be on there more since we put the horses on there, surprisingly. D.D. Kennedy, staff has replaced the education building has replaced the wood little decks in front of the doors with concrete pads, replaced the posts. Actually found out that the posts were rotted out to the point where pushed them off and the roof was off 3 inches on one side. So that's been repaired yesterday. We're getting ready to winterize the parks for water fountains, bathrooms, and shortly here, depending on the winter, we'll be taking out docks here in the next several months or so, as long as we can. So that's the update on parks right now. The extra funding request, there was 2 of them there. One was for $18,000 paving the D.D. Kennedy parking lot, and that's the upper parking lot. You come in the driveway, the access up to that parking lot was already paved in 2020, but the main parking lot was not. With that, the other funding request is for $60,000 for playground equipment. And when you talk, what does $60,000 get you for playground equipment? This is an example. This is $27,000 playground equipment. This one's $29,000. Go a little bit bigger, a little higher. This is $60,000 for playground equipment. Higher. One's $61,000 for playground equipment. Goal was, Lotus Lake and D.D. Kennedy. And go back to the first slide. So with these, a little higher for the map. With these takes ground preparation. Ground preparation to put it in there to get the right surface on there is probably around, estimated around $25,000 to $28,000 to prep the site to get the proper material for safety on there. So we could do a smaller one with that site prep, or go with a larger one and we could do the site prep in-house and save money on that side of it, depending on which way we want to go. 60,000 is in there for ARPA funds. So if you wanted to do 60,000 in the budget for one park and 60 for the next out of ARPA funds, that's an option for you. We're looking at to try to put it in this vicinity right here to tie this off. Back around up here, we could get the dirt work done. We do the parking lot. Currently here are the swings. This little spot right here is the vent for the drain field. Sewage is right next to the playground equipment. We want to move that up here so it's more handicap accessible for it. So there's a lot of prep work, but that's what we're looking at for those two items. With the extra funding request. And again, if we go with a smaller one, you know, we can include the ground prep in there. Otherwise, if we go with the larger ones that are more near that $60,000 mark, we can do one with that. Otherwise, we can try to split it, depending which route we want to go with that. And again, we want to do a different one at each park, so it's kind of a destination. The only other thing in the budget book that I just want to, there's just two typos for the park side. When you go to the CIP on page 51, it shows a side-by-side that was pushed out to 2023. Well, mid-page, it shows 15,000 for a park side-by-side. That was pushed, that's not in this year's budget, that's pushed out to 2023. Then down in the lower section, section C, the second line item, parking lot, that was for Summers Lake, that $25,000 has been pushed off to 2023. So just so you're looking at the proper one there. That's all I got.
Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
Well, the entry doors, well, you're doing parks just now. What about facility, like the entry doors at the museum?
The entry, okay, I'll get to those.
That isn't under us, is it?
No,
That's not
Oh,
us.
different one. Okay,
That's not us.
sorry. It's a different group.
Funding request.
yeah, that'll be a different committee.
But
Different
it's a
committee.
different committee, yeah. So we're looking at the playground and that.
Even in that parking lot for 18,000.
And then also your groundwater study funding.
Yeah, the $10,000 for land and water, that's to do an additional watershed,
Yep, to do another one.
groundwater studies.
Yeah, land and water is. So I landed one. 42 watersheds. That sound about right?
Oh. How many Huck 12s do we have? Is it 12?
The
I can
40s.
get, no, we're doing the larger Huck 12s, so I can't answer that. I can get that to
He's
you.
coming. He do his.
Yeah, he's gonna
so-
present
Yeah.
coincidentally on the results for the WAPO going.
So then we'll know for sure.
We'll know for sure then.
We have 40 of them. Now, playground, what does people think? That we should try to do 2 or 1 or none or
Yeah, I would
go
do,
with smaller?
I mean, we have all these beautiful parks like this, like Davy Kennedy. Why not add to it? I like the idea, do one with ARPA, do one here.
Both can. So each, it'd be 60,000 for the 2, wouldn't it? Approximately.
1,000 will get you 2 of the smaller ones
2 small ones.
without
Yeah.
the groundwork, or 1 small one with the groundwork, or 1 large one without the groundwork. That makes sense.
Gotta have the groundwork.
But we did 2 small ones with the groundwork. What would that number be?
Groundwork,
Yeah, with everything, so it'd be complete.
120,000.
Double it.
That's 30,000 for the small unit, about 25,000 to 28,000 for the groundwork.
In-house to save some?
We can do it in-house to save. I think we can save half on the groundwork easily,
Half the total?
half the total of the 28 easily. The expensive part is going to be the kid-safe material for bedding, what we could use for that, whether it's rubberized system or those pellets, or a sugar sand or something else we can use for that. It just depends on the depth, how you want to put them. we make it handicap accessible for the kids to drive up there, then it's more of a hard rubberized mat that gets a little more expensive, but then wheelchairs can go up to the ground. Turn things.
There's a difference between handicap accessible and playground accessible. Just so everyone knows, the ones that we're showing there are all handicap accessible, meaning the kids in wheelchairs can go up at the ground level. If you wanted a playground play set that's accessible, then you're talking much more expensive, where you have ramps going up to higher levels and stuff like
The
that.
slides. and stuff,
Correct.
yeah.
So this is just the ground level assessment.
So maybe this has already been asked and answered, but how much is just the handicapped one, if that's all we done?
Those all are.
Yeah,
Those are all,
Oh, they're all
yeah,
handicapped?
they're all ground level handicap, no ramps. is what
Okay,
he's saying.
yeah.
So.
Okay.
so
And I can, I got copies of those pictures for you if you want to take a look at
Say that again.
I'd like to do the two, one at each park, a different, like most at a destination type thing. And then if we could get to do the in-house work, that would be, at the cheaper cost.
3,000.
So do we have to
I think
vote?
it's,
the
I think it's
motion
an
or-
awful lot for playground equipment.
It is.
Oh, playground stuff is high.
Yeah.
You know,
Unbelievable.
I mean,
It's all powder coated now and it's all innocent and tire and rope.
No, not your average swing set.
So
I just think that personally, I think there's say better spots to spend 60 or 90,000 that gets us more bang for the buck at the end of the day. I mean, do we know how many people show up at D.D. Kennedy or Algren or Lotus Lake? I mean,
it. Kennedy gets quite a bit of use.
It does.
Lotus Lake,
Lotus Lake is busy almost every time I go by.
yeah.
There's 2, 3 cars for whatever reason. I don't know if it. Maybe it's
Kennedy gets rented out for weddings, graduations, get-togethers, family get-togethers. It's quite busy. Right now, we just have the 1960s metal swing.
Well, do we have to vote on this to move it on or just
No,
by
I mean, you
consensus?
could always come back in 2 weeks and discuss it, decide, but.
Oh.
It's kind of a recommendation. If the committee wants to, you don't have to. You can say, here's an amendment as a committee we voted on that will get worked up to general government. We insert it in there.
So at least they can look at it. So if we do by consensus that we want the 2 playgrounds at 90, I mean, at least it'd get work done and how it's gotta be financed.
Saying it, not, even though the budget was 60, the request was 60, you're asking for 90.
Because of the groundwork that has to be done. The equipment itself is 60, but the prep work is another 30.
so why not just do, I mean, we could do a scheme of things, we could do one for 45,000.
Yes, if we had to cut back. I mean, we can ask for 2 and they might give us 1.
I'd rather ask for
Brad,
I'd say we do,
If they do
we
half
do
of
one
that, then
at
we
one
don't get
park
any.
and one at the other.
that's what I think.
Of these 2 on the first page.
About the children, Brad.
It is, we're going out on a limb.
This will be up
Playground
to,
equipment for
it'll be up to
both
the
kids.
general government to decide if they give us 2. Or
Yeah.
any, they might say 0 this year. You know, it depends on how hardcore that
My
committee gets.
question is how much will how many children will be there to play on?
For sure.
No.
Build and they will come.
When's the last time you were at a wedding? It's a lot of children. there.
a month ago.
Were there any children?
Wasn't yours, was it?
About 4, but you know, if you want to make sure they had good Wi-Fi and a cell phone, then give them, most kids more use to the playground with these. But that's just me. I'm gonna vote against it no matter what, because I think it's a use.
I'd go for all three.
I'm
All three.
three. No,
Well,
two.
the 2 playgrounds and
Yeah.
and the work
And
The
the
work,
yeah.
right, so
Yeah.
that, the 90,000.
site, correct?
Yeah, so that's what we're saying, was the 90,000 for 2, and then
Yeah.
finance looks at, so what's that, 4 of us?
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
one we probably should say by consensus. Keep
What
it.
about the parking lot there at DB Kennedy?
And the parking lot, how much was that, 20?
18.
18.
18?
18,000. And our parking lot to the south is already paved and the trails. Driveway up is already paved, it's just the pad up on top that's not paved. Trails, they're also, so it just ties everything back in.
That's the last thing in that park, right, Mo, that's not paved.
Same problem Mo, with,
Was that in PK stuff though, parking lots? That in that, or not the Kennedy one?
No.
No, there were parking lots, but not for DD Kennedy.
Not for DD Kennedy, okay, but the other ones are, we have in there for parking lots.
That was creating parking lots. That was new parking lots.
That was new.
I'm for paving the parking lot. Get it done.
I would agree. I'm just for me, I'm just asking about impervious surface. Is there any change because it's going from gravel, which is impervious, to paving it?
No, there's quite a distance between the balsam branch there and the parking lot. There's plenty of greenscape to take up any water. But it actually tips back the other way away from the dam.
Yeah, just in the picture, it looked like it was right.
Yeah, it flows to the north and into the ditch line and into a swamp actually behind that. Plenty of,
Yeah,
yeah,
way
plenty
north.
of,
Throw that in on it.
Yeah, I support that too.
As long as they're working on everything out there.
I like gravel.
You like gravel?
I like gravel.
Yeah. You're from-
Gravel's
you're
inexpensive,
from Clam Falls.
cheap. We have a balanced budget in Clam Falls and no borrowed money.
Well, you can't borrow if you had a balanced budget. You don't have a credit rating.
They have their
All
own,
right,
they have their
that'll
own
be added.
legal too, so
And then land and water.
they have their own legal too.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously the 4 of us are gonna say yes on that. Then it's land and waters, for that water study, which which is ongoing, I think.
Yeah, that's the only thing about that one. Keep in mind, that would be,
Reoccurring.
yeah, it'd be reoccurring. So this year,
Until
it
we
would come
draw
out of
that.
fund balance, but in the following years, the administrator's gonna have to build that into the levy.
Sure.
Yeah. That's a high topic. Water quality.
Yeah, I just be aware that that hits with your additional new levy, that takes away from your new levy. The current are just
So we apply for a grant for that every year too, do we? Bob? I mean, we did last year, we got the grant.
If we get the grant again next year, then we'll do two groundwater studies for 2 watersheds. Again, you know,
So do we have the staff for that? Because didn't we apply for 2 last year? And the state gave us 1 because wasn't it something about we didn't have staff or? All right.
With all the other stuff going on, this will give us our ground zero for everything. So they say, water's bad. Boa farm, this, we got ground zero studies. Ahead of time. That I think is a big deal. Those 2 things are moving forward too, so it's 118,000.
18 and 10.
You didn't ask if we were
Every
all for
committee, I
it.
have a feeling it's gonna be the same.
It's four against one. I mean, because we know you like gravel, so that one went through. You think of the groundwater one? We'll take that one by itself too now. What do you think of groundwater? You let that one go through?
No.
4-1.
No, because if we didn't get the grant, then I would say yes, but as long as we get a grant and we're moving forward every year, we're still 5 years ahead of the schedule.
We're just anticipating
Yeah.
not getting a grant, if you will, then. We're just for the sake of it. Does that make you feel better?
No, because then that 10,000 is gonna get spent anyway.
Oh, it's earmarked for that.
Yeah,
Oh, it can be used.
be the reoccurring.
So it's still 4-1.
I know, it's free.
Yeah, it's free money. 4-1, it goes.
My guys in the fire department, Frederick would be shocked. I'm arguing against spending money.
All right. Star. Oh, the rest aren't ours.
Oh,
Different committees.
that last one.
Oh,
I didn't bring that one. Really good thing.
I got 2.
We're done,
Look,
though. We're done. though.
We're done.
Yeah,
We should be
we're done.
good with ours. Unless they want us to put our 2 cents in on the rest. Towers and stuff. No, we don't. I mean, with the towers affects everybody. But
Right.
I don't think, who are the towers under now?
That would be under
Public
public safety,
protection.
public works.
Okay. Still getting the rent from them? Go towards maintenance? That did ever change again?
Well, we leased one tower to Verizon for some space. That's the only lease we have is the one tower.
The one that just went up. Don't we get at least money for that, for the land and stuff?
Sterling?
I don't think we're getting anything for,
But we.
I think we just turned the land over to them.
No, at least. Yeah, we got so much money, I thought we got like 5,000 a year or something.
I don't think so. I think we're just getting the one we have a lease with Verizon.
Maybe look at that. I thought we leased them the land.
Sure that isn't the one in Sterling? It's like 500 or 600.
We've had an existing one elsewhere that we get about 20 grand a year for. So,
Another one that was leased.
There was a lease agreement on that one up in Sterling. I can provide
Yes.
that agreement.
There was.
So we have it when we committed the tower.
And we tried to say that that goes into the maintenance and stuff. You know, that it would go into the sheriff's department's budget when we do any leases with towers.
that would touch about that much of the maintenance on our radios.
But it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, that little bit gets thrown out a window otherwise.
Just the consoles and dispatch are $120,000 a year.
Yeah. All right. So that should do us, Bob. That's all the stuff you asked for?
Well, at your next meeting,
You got more?
yes, sir, well,
Just pass it, just put it in the budget.
3 more.
3 more things?
Those are the things that though, and if, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't want to confuse the budget with ARPA.
Okay.
So we're talking budget today. Next time we'll talk about the ARPA projects. I'll have the project statement for each one and you can query Bob about what is this.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So like all the recycling stuff comes off this list now after that, because it goes on the ARPA list.
Some of it will, not the truck.
Not the truck or the Gaylords.
Oh, I thought you said the truck. Ooh, okay,
The truck comes out of the,
okay,
would be a standalone, come out of the budget.
okay.
Otherwise it takes away from the upgrade.
Oh, sure. But the conveyors and stuff that were in there, they'll go into the.
They go into the upgrade.
Okay.
Big haul truck stays.
Okay, and you did pretty much your update. How about? We missed one. How's the cattail come?
Tim, I have not heard a word from DNR at this point.
Me neither.
But then.
3 years and
6 months.
Get their number from staff, Kim. You'll get it.
Oh, they won't talk to me
anymore.
anymore. So we had nothing.
No.
Again. It's all right out.
Reach back out again and
Nudge.
Rattle.
Yes. All right. A. Number 9, Tim.
I'll keep this brief for you guys. You were all here last night and understand that the projects that were recommended by general government were funded around 1.45 million, at least recommended. Right? I thought I'd take just a couple minutes to talk about the next steps then. So those projects are moving forward. They'll get prioritized, refined, and fleshed out further with PTAG, Alta, and staff in the next few months. Project timeline for Alta is to have a fully developed plan with the recommendations, all the projects listed, that kind of stuff for January. And then there will be a presentation of that plan at the January County Board meeting.
They're going to give it to us first or go right to the full board? I mean, the full board, then it's, everybody gets it. You don't have to do it twice.
Yeah, they, in our project schedule and with the budget for them, they have one presentation to the county board. You can see the plan certainly beforehand. So there's still some work to be done. We need to get better cost estimates, better details about those projects that are recommended and prioritized. Again, the goal of the project and what we have scoped with them is to outline 6 priority projects, one for each user group. They'll flesh those out.
Tim, out of the money that was allocated from the lime quarry towards parks, how much of that is left to pay for all that was allocated last night on those sheets? You know,
The balance of the lime quarry proceeds, is that your question,
Yeah.
Casey?
972.
959.
990 or 972. Remember, that's to be
Yeah.
used on the park or the trail project. That will budgeted for 2022 already. Park projects total cost more than that. We'll have to find funds. Say, how do we pay for the things that are going to? That's what discussed last night. How do we commit to this now? We can commit to all the projects now, but knowing that we can only do what we can do in 2022 and 2023, we can say, hey, we committed the money, but in essence, the next year, a new resolution could change that. I'm not saying it would happen that way, but that's, I think that the discussion last night was, let's make sure we say, this is our goal, this is what we want to do, let's commit these funds and encourage the next board.
The Lime quarry funds were spent. The allocation.
Much. But January, Alta will have that deal so they can prioritize to get some of these done too. So they will be.
The cost
Pretty much
estimates
as
and
much
get those,
as possible.
yeah,
There's only so much physically.
right.
Some of these, we will look at outsourcing.
I believe so, we'll have to, we just don't have the capacity. Some of the planning work we can do in-house. You know, our rough cost estimate that we delivered last night, worst case scenario with no grant subsidies was 905. I highly doubt we'll spend that much next year. So we'll have the same conversation next year in terms of when we're in the budget season to allocate for subsequent. But the beauty of last night's decision is now we have the green light to pursue those top priority projects. And Alta will work with us. And we'll work with PTAG as well, identify which projects to implement.
Then in that parks budget and stuff, we should look at, we're gonna have reoccurring maintenance now too. So I mean, we have to build something in there for that because we're gonna build all these trails, build all these things. Somebody's gonna take care of them.
We did add 2 line items for trail grooming and trail maintenance. I believe 20,000 on one line item and 15 on the other line item to anticipate having more
What would be done?
work on the trails with us, but not impacting the groups, relying on them to do the maintenance. That we'll have more. We did add to the parks budget.
They have- So that we don't, all of a sudden, we don't have maintenance. We have all these trails and can't maintain them. Now what do we do? And we do have, the motorized ones are grant.
Intent
And
is
get good money.
quickly. That, you know, this is one of our priorities. We did Herculean work, Bob and P-TAG, get these things ready to go. We're not going to slow down. You know, we're not going to do anything rash, but we want to make sure we're doing this while we can. The other thing I'll say,
But we want to protect what we built.
yes.
So
So the
to maintain
maintenance
it.
part of it is, yes, we're starting to look at our budget to increase that. The other thing is, once we start getting these things in motion and built, I think we're going to find opportunities. I don't know if it's the right phrase or not. Revenue streams. Because there are people that will want to advertise at the cross-country shelter or whatever we have down there that, you know, to say, hey, can I put up an advertising sign so they come to my brewery? They're done skiing, you know. Those are the things that we're going to start developing to say, how can we help fund our maintenance of all these new resources that we have?
Whole bridge.
Maybe a farm tour up in Clam Falls.
And across the only way across the dam is
So,
give
think so.
Brandon down or you can across the bridge.
Tracy won't cross
Oh,
the bridge.
I'm not going for
No,
sure.
she won't. She'll big somebody else.
Suppose.
All right, what else is that?
That's what I got.
Good, okay. Well, thanks, Tim. Thanks.
Which one are you looking for? Excuse me, do you want the ordinance text? Because I have that up.
Yeah, I got some maps too.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Do you have the white one?
Okay.
You take that one.
Take today. Then the 3 PDFs there. Right. There's been some comments about, you know, when we require a survey in our office and that for any splitting of land and stuff. The statute that governs this would be chapter 236. There is a provision underneath the statute that allows for like court orders to be able to split out land. It allows for adjoining landowner transfers if they need to transfer a little amount of land. And I can show you an example when that might apply in here as well. However, and that basically the only other split that you can actually do of any land is to do halves. So if you have a 40-acre parcel, a quarter, and you want to split the north half from the south half, or the east half from the west half, and that would be able to be done without a survey. And the reason being is because when they do that legal transfer of the property, the legal description would be the north half of the southeast and the southwest, for example, section, town, range, you know, that very simple, straightforward. It's a really concrete legal description because we know what that quarter is and we can trace it all back in that to the actual section corner monuments. And so that is a good legal description. And because it's so short, there's not a lot of chance for errors. Okay. Now, fortunately, we've got a lot of property in Polk County that hasn't been surveyed. Lots and lots. And we run into all different kinds of configurations that people want to do. Here's one in the town of Audit, for example. you know, how can we take and write a legal description for this triangle shape? That without having a survey, simply. And the problem is that if you don't have the survey, you can see what happened. This is a one that we recently worked on, and so this has been recently surveyed now. But we had a gap here in between this plat and this 40 up here to the north. We had a gap here. We got a building there that's over the lot line, and that's because the meets and bounds descriptions don't tie, and that they don't match, and that so call it an error, call it, and that somebody measuring different than somebody else back in the day. That, but now we've got, I believe it's about 16 feet that somebody's gonna have to take and go and take and see who's got the actual title to that. Might be a dead guy, then they might have to get applied title action on this through the court system in order to actually take that land and keep the title. You can see that somebody thinks that they already own that land and they built across the property. And so if we knew exactly who owned that strip, this would be a good case for that adjoining landowner exception, where then they could take and tie that to their existing parcel. But otherwise, in that right now, we're gonna have to go back and find out who did it. And a lot of times we see this around our lakes, where a plat was done, they platted in a road, and the guy that took and did the plat wanted the town to take it over, but maybe the town never took it over, so now it's a private road. And all of a sudden, he kicks the bucket, 20 years after he does the plat, and we're still left with this platted roadway going up through there, and there's no ownership on it. So that can require a lot more court costs and stuff for the people, as in cases like this. You want to pull up one of the other ones? Here's the town of Garfield, right? It's easy. And then we got a 40-acre parcel. Here's our quarter section. We're basically taking the north 5 acres, right? That should be all it is. Simple split. And that, well, if you read their meets and bounds that they did or had their attorney do, that they own this chunk here with their house. Then there's a 33-foot strip here that they don't own. And then their meets and bounds has that 33-foot. Well, that person thinks that they own the whole thing because they've got 2 outbuildings on that strip that they don't own. And if we had a survey, we don't have that kind of issue because that would be, cleaned up when that survey is done. So, prime example, of a case where they think they have it, but they really don't. Anyway, and true now, and that if this came through, you could possibly catch it, but then you're creating a lot more headaches for the people because they got to go back and start from scratch and redo all their documents to take and transfer the property or whatever, get a new meets and bounds. So anyway, as for that, they might have to have a survey done just to get that description to be cleared up. And now we might have ownership issues because it maybe belonged to somebody else that's no longer alive. They might have to go through quiet title and everything else. So you can see that there's a lot of implications down the road, and that not taking and having good legal descriptions. Jump to that other one.
So question on just to catch up. Why don't the title companies catch some of this? You pay a title company to come in and check your land.
They don't have the mapping capabilities that we have. That what they're looking for is vesting and whether or not the previous deed says the same thing. We're going through that with the Clam Falls Dam right now.
Everybody just adds on to it and that never really
Yeah,
looks at the map.
the way attorneys look at it, well, that's what was conveyed to this guy, even though it may be in error. And so we may have errors that are perpetuated down the road to where folks really don't know where their property lines are at. So that's why we have non-conforming structures and sewers and fights and arguments. And, our office deals with that consistently. I've got 2 sitting on my desk right now that folks don't really know what they own. One fellow wants to sell his property. Well, he doesn't have access. He thought, well, they told me when I bought it I had access. Well, that's not what it says on your deed. So you know, the ordinance here is trying to mitigate. I say trying because it's not perfect. No ordinance is perfect. But because we actually got to do some rewrite. Because right now we got some attorneys that are trying to do some slippery stuff going around the ordinance. So what we're just trying to do is mitigate problems like this elderly fella that has a buyer. However, the buyer can't get a mortgage on it because he doesn't have access. So, you know, that's really what we're trying to do with the ordinance. And I think it's worked quite well, to be honest with you.
And it's standard, you know, and so every surveyor that frequently works in Polk County that knows that, okay, this is the requirements that I have to follow, you know, so there's that consistency out there. And it doesn't matter in that what size parcel it is, and that, I mean, here's a 42.37 acre parcel, and that, I mean, as that property owner, you'd ask, how did I get that sliver, and how did I get this sliver? Well, this whole thing was government law, you know, going up here like this, and that, and they just exempted, and that out of that meets and bounds description, and that's what they're left with, you know. So there's all kinds of that kind of stuff around. Underneath the actual ordinance right now, if they were gonna take and survey this, they would take and have to, you know, to split it or whatever, they would create a lot and they would have to survey the remedy. Well, once we have this parcel fabric out there where, and that those remnants are also surveyed, and that to take and go and do another split of that land is gonna be much easier because all of the work has already been done. And that there's not gonna be those ownership issues that I showed in those other examples. St. Croix County, anything less than a 40-acre parcel requires a survey, and that across the board. So it doesn't matter what you're doing in that survey. So anyway, so, yep, and that.
Are they the same?
What's that?
We're not the same.
Pernex is a little bit different. It's got some weird wording, but actually is left up to the discretion of the zoning administrator whether or not it has to be surveyed under a certain acreage, which, no gods, I would never suggest that because then, you know, you got to be subjective and, well, you gave it to this guy.
Consistent.
You know, what, you know, so I'd rather have, me personally, I'd rather have the ordinance black and white, cut and dry. That way the attorneys, the surveyors, the public knows what they're dealing with.
Here in county too is same as here.
Yeah.
So you're thinking this one needs just some work though to?
Yeah, what we got happening now is folks are trying to combine parcels on a transfer to themselves. In other words, they want to deed properties to themselves to avoid the subdivision order because we have that exemption for swaps between adjoining landowners. It's not real clear that you need to have two different landowners. So now I got attorneys calling, well, it's a swap between a joiner. Well, it's the same owner. Not really a swap. So we need to rewrite that. And also I'd like to put some verbiage in there that once a swap is attained between two different landowners, that it cannot be separated unless by survey. That way we don't have all these funky meets and bounds descriptions going out there. We review them anyway here, and we review them to make sure that, is this really what you want to do? It's not even going around the building you're trying to go around, you know?
Yeah.
And so we're just trying to prevent folks from having to hire attorneys. In my opinion, attorneys are a lot more expensive than surveyors.
What's
It's
the
getting
benefit?
there.
What's
It's getting
the,
there maybe, but, oh.
what's the benefit to have a swap if you own the land?
What's that?
What's the benefit to have a swap if you own the land? I guess I don't.
Well, we get all sorts of different combinations of things, like, they want to sell the south, like right now, I'm dealing with one where they want to sell the south 10 acres of the east 20 acres of a 40. Well, they own the 40 to the east. Well, they got the 10 acres up here that they don't know what to do with because it's in violation of the subdivision ordinance. Well, can I deed it to myself? And then I'll have the south 10 acres and I can just sell it without a survey.
And if they hook that 10 acres with that other 40 and that our net, lots at the end might be the same. So instead, we're not creating any new lots. So now we don't have to do a town checklist. We don't have to go through the town. The town doesn't have any input. And then, because I just took my 40 and made it a 50 and I sold the other 30 off, and that, so we still have 2 lots.
So it's
And
not
that-
clear in the
and-
ordinance, but that really wasn't what the intent of the ordinance was.
It's like
So,
recreational land up north,
yeah.
like 41.1 acres or something. So if you bought a straight 40, you got tax for recreation. So you
Well,
buy-
the old ordinance, prior to right now, to where we can split a 40, used to say anything less than 19 acres. Well, that made it so you couldn't split, say, a government lot or a fractional 40 where there may be only 35 acres in there. So what we did is revise the ordinance to where you can split a 40 in 2, no matter what size that 40 is, because we have fractional 40s, we have government lots, we have different things that during the public land survey, they just not 40.
Yeah.
People ask me how many 40s there are in Polk County. I say 0. None of them are 40. There ain't a single one out there that's got exactly 40 acres. They're all a combination thereof.
8, 37, 39, and all the fractions. But that's the reason why they're doing it, and that of course speeds up the whole process. The town loses their input on it. From the assessment side too, and that there may be some benefits in that if there's a lot of ag land in that by combining some woods to it, because then maybe it goes from productive forest to ag forest, which then is assessed at half rate. I mean, there's all kinds of things and implications that could come out of it. So
We would want to add that verbiage so when we do this update. These other ones, we could do it at the
it
same
rolls
time.
into our condo stuff. and
Into the
depending on
condo stuff.
the site,
Yeah.
something, and then Steve is referring to.
That verbiage you would have kind of ready here.
Yeah, we gotta clean up that exemption
Okay.
portion.
See, most of the stuff is referred to as statute, so some of it you have to exempt it. Cemeteries.
A lot of those that are exempted, like I said, besides the court order or besides the adjoining landowner, like a cemetery plat, those are all state reviewed anyway. And that's one of the reasons why they're exempt from our subdivision.
Questions then?
So,
Oh, no.
Trying to get around it. Here it comes.
so we're having this discussion because I'm the guy with the questions. Actually, my neighbor's the guy with the questions. Who owns 38.57 acres and wanted to split it in half. In theory, the 20, and give to his daughter and son-in-law who are going to move back into the area, build a house, and because it's not a true 40, they can't split it, without surveying it.
Because they've also got then a 2 or 3 acre lot down in the southeast corner that's already been split out. So
Right,
it's
the
not
1.5.
it's not a 40 acre parcel that is just 36 acres, and that it's a 40 acre parcel that's already had a house lot pulled out of it. And now our legal description for that south 10 acres, and that would be the south 10 acres of this quarter, excluding this really meets and bounds description that's really bad. I mean, so here's in case where we have issues like we've got here, where we don't really know what it is. So
Right, other than, and I don't care, I'm just in this for the argument.
Clam Falls legal, can't they just get this taken care of?
Hey, Clam Falls legal would have taken care of And
Maybe
we're not
that's the
zoned and we're still here.
They lost their
But,
tail.
so, because there it is, to me, all it is, it's a line down the center of a 40. And it's 20 acres on one side, it's 18.57 on the other side. And we're making someone pay a surveyor to draw the imaginary line down the center where there's a road on two sides.
That's the question. Where is the center?
Where's the center?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cares.
Well,
Well,
You know, you're talking family members, and the nastiest discussions and the nastiest fights I've had in my office are between family members. I had a couple of clients that were duking it out in the backyard here because of a land problem. So, you know, family is what, you know, people just don't know where their lines are at. And then they say, well, this is a good building site right here. Okay, where is it? Right over the line.
So what
This
happens?
is where the sewer goes.
So what happens when I was at a town board meeting recently and the guy walked in and said, I just found out I own half my neighbor's house and my other neighbor owns half of my house. And the whole town board started laughing and said, and so does everybody else here.
off that far.
Everybody's off that far. So everybody owns.
Sounds like a good reason to have zoning. It
Yeah.
sounds like a good reason to have.
It is not Clam Falls. It is not Clam Falls.
Well, I had a guy come after me because he couldn't get a refi. And,
Talking Moon Lake.
and he couldn't get a refi, and he said I'll be back talking to you. And I said, you really need to get it surveyed. Went out there and surveyed, found out his mom's house was over the line and his house was over the line. It's been like that forever. Well, yep, but it needs to get straightened out.
yeah.
I
And
just
so
want
they
to,
were denied the refi, and he got mad at me because he had a screwed up legal description.
So if we just look at this map here real. So here's a 40 right here. Okay, forget about all this busyness and lots and that. We've got good mapping now and then really somewhat accurate. But if we're gonna take the north half of this 35 acres, we're reading a meets and bounds description. What happens if that description and that is for this piece and we leave that little sliver because they're not linked back to the section corners like they should be? And then, so this today would be easily able to be recreated again. And that, because if that meets and bounds doesn't match, whoever's measuring off from what stake, you know, could happen anytime. So I mean, that's the issue, and that is anytime you have that, we don't know that that is perfectly up to that 40. And without a GPS, I mean, you can't cite 40 line to 40 line or quarter to quarter, you know, unless there's a survey iron. So you have no idea. So what are you measuring off? A lot of the old surveyors back in the day, you know, and that they had their wheels or they had their links, you know, and they were trying to measure off from, say, Highway 65. Well, Highway 65 looked pretty straight there, you know. Turns out it was off quite a bit. It wasn't following that section line. And that, well, now that threw it off for that whole mile. You know, it'd be going over.
I get it. The neighbors have already hired surveyors, so.
Well, a lot of times, that's why I asked about title companies and stuff. The mortgage people won't give you refi or any money because you don't know where your lot is. That's happening a lot.
Yeah, that title company, they can insure vesting, but they really don't know what's on the ground.
What are the
Yeah.
roads?
Where their line goes through the property and through the house. Because, you know, a lot of it was the one dad gave his son 5 acres out of his property, but it was way back toward the woods. So they just drew out 5 acres and it was wrong.
Most of your average people in that can't read some bounds legal description. They have no idea. That's why on a real estate purchase agreement, they use an address. That's why they don't write a legal description. You know, I mean, and that they should, in my opinion, be using the legal description, but, you know, most people can't read it.
Just want to say that the old surveyor's done it so right in Clam Falls, apparently. That when the county surveyed the corner where 4 landowners adjoined, dead center in the center of the 6-inch post. on it. Steve put the post on the outside of my corner. Survey
I
markers.
missed it that much, huh?
That was that
Well,
old
I tell you a
machine
story
finally
about four
replaced.
surveyors that got into a fight up in Italy Township. Arguing about a section. That's a story for another day.
The realtors don't help either, but they tell people when they're buying stuff.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. Most of them can't read a legal description, you know, I mean, and that's where you wonder, okay, how come this didn't get caught when they built that garage, you know? Oh, this mapping's only been around since, you know, late 90s, early 2000s, you know, and it's been getting refined as more surveys are getting done as far as the accuracy of it, you know? So before that, I had no idea, you know, it was what they thought, you know?
Some of the meets and bounds are in lengths, rods, 10-rod, 3-rod road, 4-rod road, everybody's going,
Not everything's in feet and inches, so.
so it really screws them up.
And like I said, on that triangle, hey, you know, this one here at least has straight lines, but now, you know, we're going around the road, we've got a curve. And that, when we have a survey done, we have actual, you know, the arc of that curve and everything, so that there is no gaps. That, whereas, without that, there's no way you can create a description. And that's where the ordinance at the county level still has to apply to all properties, you know, so while it may be really simple for this one, and that, what happens if the road was right there and there was a curb on it, you know, how are you gonna tie everything in? And then where do you draw that line, you know, and that if it's not an even quarter, and that, how do you do it, 5 acres, 10 acres? Well, what happens if they do it a pie shape like that, you know?
That's where we end up with tax deed slices.
Right.
That you can't do anything with. It was
Years later, we,
some, but no, there's a bunch of right of ways and slippers like that.
Even them have done that in cases and that where they'll assign a gap or something, a parcel number so that it comes back on tax.
Okay. Let's jump in, right? We good with that? CSF stuff?
Did you tee him up on my other issue we talked about, Bob, or not?
You remind me
want
what
it?
that is? Yeah.
I got a book.
Page 65. So this one I'm a little more, I really think is wrong. So if I go back to a property in Clam Falls, sold 3, 4, 5 years ago. The owner owned, because it's a railroad, 2 50-foot lots that had that imaginary line through the center. There was no doubt that she owned the entire outside parcel, but had to pay $800 or $1,000 to a surveyor to remove the imaginary line because she had to put a new sewer in, sell her house that went on both sides of the property. Well, if you're in Clam Falls, Lewis, I gotta think, Dresser, most of these, I mean, you got a house in Clam Falls, you've more than likely got 5, 6, 7 lots.
Yeah.
You own it all, but if you got to cross one of those lines, it's gonna cost you a pretty good chunk of money to get that line removed. And my question is there again is, I own the whole circumference. Why are we making it that individual hire a surveyor to remove that line? Because it's
Because they
just,
can convey, because they have separate descriptions. And they can technically convey that separate description, and then you have a non-conforming structure. Everybody says, oh, I'm never gonna sell this, like the checks in the mail. I've heard this story a number of times.
but once
I'm not
that
gonna
line is,
sell it. I'm never gonna sell this. They get into hard times and they say, oh, well, this lot's marketable. And the next thing you know, you've got a structure that is either over the line or a foot away because they sold the adjacent lot that they promised us that they were never gonna sell.
so if you move that imaginary lot and make it one lot instead of 2 lots,
Right.
which is what happened in this case, does it not just have one lot number?
Yes.
One PID
So
number.
here's the deal though, for that. Gotta back up. Okay, the surveying world, you have a map of survey and a certified survey map, CSM. Okay? Both of them are done by a licensed surveyor. Both of them are done to the same quality standards. And that the difference is you could have those 2 lots in Plat of Clam Falls. I'm going to use lot 1 and 2, for example. Okay, you can have those 2 lots. You can get a map of survey done on that. They can do the meets and bounds description of those lots, show you where your markers are, basically. And that, but the legal description of that, those 2 parcels, and that whether they're 1 parcel number or 2 parcel numbers is going to be exactly the same. That it's going to be lots 1 and 2, Plat of Clam Falls. Okay? Now, this is the same on our lakes too. Let's say we got Morningside Park over on Horseshoe Lake, and that got a house, they want to build a McMansion right in the middle of it, and that they can have lot 1, lot 2 Morningside Park. Let's say the house burns down 20 years from now, the legal description is still going to say lot 1 and lot 2 Morningside Park. They could take and sell lot 1 and keep lot 2. Okay? That's one reason. A CSM would still have the meets and bounds description of lot 1 and lot 2 of Clam Falls. But now the legal description of that parcel becomes lot 1, CSM number, blank, volume, blank, page blank. And those would be numbers that would fill in those blanks. That's all they've got to transfer. Now their legal description formally changed. The only way to change the legal description is by the CSM or the certified survey map, because now it's formally, this is by the state. This is what the state says is the only way that you can change it is lot 1 of that CSM. Number 2 is, and Polk County did this for a while, and that up until a couple of years ago, is the Murr family case versus St. Croix County. Basically, it was in regarding 2 lots down on the St. Croix River, and that the Murr family had a vacant lot, and they had a lot with a cabin on it right next door. Okay, the county adopted a subdivision ordinance that said if you've got 2 lots next to each other, and those 2 lots are non-conforming, that those lots are automatically combined into one, and that underneath 1 parcel number, and that so that they're more conforming or that they reach conforming status. Well, that went all the way through. That was ruled as a government overtaking, and that or a improper eminent domain taking of that land, and that because the Murrs ran into hard times, and they I shouldn't say hard times, but they ran into times where they wanted to make some improvements and build a new cabin. Okay? And so they were going to sell the other lot and that to help pay for the new cabin. And that same thing. And that so if the county goes ahead, combines lot 1 and lot 2, Plat of Clam Falls, and that we have that legal description now, and that at any time, and that if we put that into 1 parcel number without having some kind of a formal document, and that then that could be ruled against the county for improper eminent domain case. And also, they could take to say that they're prevented from being able to sell it. Anyway, so that's the difference. And those are the 2 reasons. CSM is the only way to change the legal description. 2 is because county. So, and 3 is look at all the issues that you can have, and having title on everything. So, because it happens. I mean, people are selling these lake lots when lake frontage is worth $2,000 a foot. If they can sell a 50-foot lot, and that for $100,000,
So when they combine that, the only way is you do CSM, it takes that lot 1 and 2 out of your description.
because
That's what you have to get around.
Yeah, we changed it completely in the
Because
tax
now-
roll, and it gets assigned 1 tax.
It's like even where I live too in Osceola, I'm Arson Block 2, 24, 25, 26.
The old
and then half
description
of it,
disappeared.
different. The only way to get it out was what your house is on is to get it down to 1, survey it, that it's
Correct.
lot whatever.
then we got that lot 1 CSM number description.
Yep.
Now we go and we pull that survey map, and page 2 of that survey map is maybe a half a long page of a meets and bounds description, and that doing the whole outer perimeter of those 2 lots. That's all they're describing. They're not tweaking to that middle line at all, and they're taking that and tracing that back to the section quarters so that everything can be tied in.
And it's in the
And
right
then-
spot.
So that's what's going on. That's why a CSM is a powerful
That answer your question?
Oh, I get it. It just doesn't mean I agree with it.
No, that.
Yeah, unfortunately, for like a sewer, you know, and that, we've had cases in that where, you know, people will have that middle lot line, you know, and our Board of Adjustment will look at that and say, okay, well, you own both, we'll allow you to go a foot closer to the line. System, the state plumbing code does not have any variance provisions to seek a reduced property line setback. So it has to meet and that the setback to that property line, and if you still have lot one and lot two, that line is still there.
That one I have is a perfect example.
I just talked to the
I got
surveyor
one
the
that
other day.
cabins on 3 lots. So we own it all. They're tearing down stuff, doing all this. They can't put a sewer anywhere because it goes across 2.5 lots. It's that big of a sewer. So no, I can't meet the setbacks on 1 lot because they're all 50 foot. And they don't- So they have to combine the 3 lots.
On Deer Lake, I mean, they're 50-foot lots. I mean, each one of them probably worth easily $100,000.
Can't build on it or do anything unless you have to. Big Lake is that way too.
There's a lot of them, and on these
50
lakes.
foot lots on the lakes.
Yep.
They
Yeah.
sold them for camping is what it was.
Yeah.
Was the John Lugers of the day that sold it as camping. But he made sure nobody got 2 together.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he made sure that different owners got every other one. So you would never have that 100 feet to build on it. So it'd be camping all the time while the people got together, traded, bought every
Yeah.
other one, and
Yeah.
kind of went around it. But that's what he did.
Huh.
He tried to get it so that nobody would build next to me because every other lot, somebody owns 50 feet, you gotta have 100.
And these shacks.
Oh, that's pretty crafty.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He did that at a
A
couple
lot of
of
them are
Small Lake,
combining
Big Lake.
150-foot lots in one lot. You know, so
Well, these people finally quit fighting, got together, and then they sell it to each other and trade it because they owned every other lot.
I don't get it.
Oh, that was a
Oh my
moneymaker. It was huge. Take another step, I'll put the stake in for $100. Boom, take another step, put the stake in. That's our meets and bounds right there. Oh, I gotta deal with that every time you go to, you can't meet your setback.
Right.
There you sit. Yeah, I mean, I could come up there, start to tear the house down, all of a sudden realize nothing will fit. Yeah, because it doesn't really, they think they do own it all, but there's still lot lines everywhere, and there you sit.
and we've been so far talking about small lots. It's no different for a guy that owns 80 acres.
Yeah.
And wants to
Right.
build in the middle of the 240s. I mean, fortunately, you can sell that 40 separate from this 40, you know, and at any time, you know.
Yeah.
And then they're gonna have title issues, and then now it's after the fact, and now they probably want to sell this property, or maybe even got a buyer on it. Now they're scrambling to try to get the survey done versus doing it proactively ahead of time, so.
Scales would wait 4 months for the survey. So,
Any more questions on that? It's a good conversation to have so that you guys know what the reasons are behind that, having surveys and stuff. So unfortunately, there is a shortage of them. You know, a lot of our surveyors are getting older. We've got a couple new ones around and that, but
All I wanted to do was cut down on their workload.
And they
Not
could, no,
anymore.
I was thinking of the surveyors.
I was thinking title people actually come in and did something, but they don't. You get the money and they don't care.
No, they don't even look up on
They
the
don't even look
system
it up.
themselves. They
Yeah.
call you and say, hey, could you look this up and tell
The
me
real
if there's
estate
delinquents? You can do that yourself.
we get that all the time.
Yep.
Yeah, appraiser. And you think that they would know how to look up and then see how properties.
Yeah,
Every day.
no. Do it for me. I'll collect the money, but you do
This
my
kind of
work.
falls into the subdivision part too, doesn't it then? In
Kind of,
condos, because that's
yeah.
another way of dividing land up. So
Well-
we're kind of falling right into it.
So in the past, and that, I think I mentioned it at the last meeting that I was here for, that a condo is nothing more than a form of ownership. It's no different than a joint tenancy. It's no different than a sole proprietorship, whatever. And so when we look at that, it's really hard to regulate based on that because we've got a lot of properties that might be owned by one person, 10 people, you know, maybe a youth group, who knows, you know. So when you have that, difficult to do. And to create any regulations of the statutes that have basically made it so that we can only review a condo plat. However, what our ordinance lacks right now, and what I believe this is going back to, is like the Calderwood property and being able to create higher residential density on a lot, any particular lot for that matter, and then be able to sell off condo units. And that to try to get around the density standards. So I think that we can go way into this if we want, or we can take and do something fairly simple. It's up to you guys. I did put out, we have a, what we call a Google group, you know, the zoning administrators in our portion of the state. Didn't get very good feedback on it because so many counties that are facing the same thing as we are, that they're really difficult to regulate. But basically, Barron County and Burnett County both just have a simple provision similar to the top one here that says that no lot may be able to be developed at a higher density than that, than allowed, even as a condo plat. And then it also clarifies that a duplex or a multifamily, each unit of the duplex or multifamily counts as a residential structure because you can basically have a family in each unit and that. So Barron and Burnett are doing something like that. If you want to get into a little bit more, Bayfield County has kind of a unique kind of development, a multi-unit development. This would be similar to our conservation design development. Our conservation design is reducing lot sizes. But this one here is basically a conditional use type of process for any development consisting of 3 or more units on the property. There's a bunch of provisions there. I'm not sure if it's what. We don't see that many of these. Polk County, we see more condos getting dissolved than we see them getting created. There's been a couple cases that I can think of, like going through a divorce or something like that, that have been done. But our banks don't seem like they lend money on them like they do maybe down in Florida. They just don't work like they do in the southern part of the states.
What do they mean by, on the Bayfield one, environmental impact analysis?
That's the benefit of that. This is so like the Calderwood property, it would give the committee the ability or staff, depending on how it's written, to require an analysis maybe for the boat traffic on the lake. You know, and that's, you know, bad thing about condos is like our impervious surface calculations are basically out the window because generally they're a larger lot and the land is all underneath the same ownership. And that because you don't own the land in a condo, you only own the rights to that building or to that space to be able to use that space. And that, so when we calculate our impervious surface, we have to take the impervious of each unit, take that on the total land mass, you know, which usually there's a fairly large green space too. So those don't apply like they would on a normal. So that could fall into that environmental analysis as well, or the stormwater side of it. So it's got its own standards. I mean, we can play with these square feet, zoning districts, have their own, you know, so and they've even got, so like in each zoning district, they've got a different amount of open space requirement, which is what we've got for our conservation design development too. Depending on that, we've got like 40 and 60% open space required. All in what you're thinking, or if you just want to do a general statement, I think we can add that to, I'd probably put it in the subdivision and the shoreline ordinance. So we do have a condo review section in subdivision provisions. I'd put that in there and then put this by our density standards in the lot sizes of Article 11, or what used to be Article 11 of the shoreline.
We could do it the simpler way without busting down all these, because there's quite a few deals when you get into the condos.
The simpler one, I think, would get the end goal done, and that what you guys originally started looking for. with just taking and not exceeding the density on these lakes. So the Calderwood property, for example, they're a little over 3 acres. Houses on that property. Story, whether it's a condo, whether it's whatever, privately owned, that's up to them, but that density.
So 3 condos each have 2 units in it,
No.
with 4-bedroom units. No, okay, that's what I'm looking at. They'd have 3, but they'd have.
Well, and it depends on what you want to make the text. And then scroll to the top.
That was the other thing. They had some text about units.
Yeah. Duplex and multifamily units shall each be owned as.
Okay, yep. Okay, so that will cover that. Sure.
Experience, one unit can house, our experience on Little Balls, 60 beds. Don't want that. So I mean, we got to look at other ways that people will get around this.
They will try.
Well, it'd still be by the sewer size and stuff. They have room for a sewer that big. But I mean, they did like Little Balls had room, to do it. They put that huge system in and did it, so. But density, how would that apply there? Do we have?
Really arbitrary number, but I suppose you could put a density on a residential unit. And that a residential unit is 6 people or less or something, or 8 people or less. I mean, it's an arbitrary number, but sure. And if it became a group home or something like that, I mean, we do have a few group homes in Polk County that are in that 11 to 16, that would count as 2. Usually they're not on the lakes, and that where they're going to run into density issues.
Run into Bible camps, different things like
Yeah.
that. I mean, we're gonna run into headache too.
The trend in the metro areas where it's not on the 1,000 feet of the lakeshore, but it's behind it.
Yeah.
An outlot, and then they accumulate there, park their trailers, park their people, all that, and then they bus them down to the lake.
That's
Where they have docks and they
Yeah,
already
yeah.
launched their boat. So it's more than just a lakeshore issue. It's
Yeah.
gonna become
We have to start.
I just wanted to bring up the multi-unit development. That's what Bayfield responded with.
Started with it at least. But now will we have to put something in that states, puts the word condo in there to limit it or not? You know what I mean? The state's got quite a bit of condominiums. I mean, they got.
We can put it in there, but again, that I don't think it's gonna matter, that, I mean, because it's just a form of ownership.
Form of ownership, but if the word isn't in there, some of these,
Right, just simply, any lot cannot be developed to a higher density, including a condo flat or something.
I think we would, because then if it isn't noted, I mean, some of these lawyers come around that, it doesn't say condo, so we can do it. Multi-unit can be whatever, but it's not, but I mean, if the word condo isn't in there, I think I read that in some of these opinions from these lawyers, that if it doesn't say it, they can do it. Get around it, I mean, because if we just say multi-unit development, at least if the word condo's in there and you have to go with that, at least we're covered. I think we have to do that. Because then as soon as you do that, by definition, like it says here, there's a lot of different things they have to do. That falls under the state statute, that's 703. Yeah, then it's more, then they have to go through this manual like this, that's 40 pages long or whatever. But if we didn't mention that, I think they can get around it, like you said, too, on back lots and stuff. Make sure we put that.
So I could just simply, right at the end of this sentence here, including but not limited to condo flats, multi-unit developments, whatever.
Yeah. I think that would do it to catch these because, some of this, if it doesn't say it, get around it.
Good, I can include that in there, so.
Yeah, because they have a bunch here. They have a bunch of these that they were doing it. It didn't mention it, so they got away with it.
Jason, why is F1, zoning district F1?
That's basically counties.
Is that,
That's basically counties. Yeah. I think if you go into my flash drive, and I should have the proposed text that has it in our zoning.
I think this is it.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah, is that's the one I opened. Is this one? Here's what that one.
Well, no.
If we see that, that would help. 11A.
Okay.
And B is the park model stuff yet? Now, B, is this gonna kind of transition into that ag tourism, what they want to do?
Well, that's a good question. We thought we'd get through the park model provisions because we'd like to combine that with resolution 2021, the zone towns to assume
Oh, okay, yep.
use in the shoreline district. We'd like to combine those and be able to have put that on the November County Board agenda. Package those two together. Agritourism, and I'll talk about this later. We have a speaker coming, but that's later in November. So originally we were going to combine all of these. If you remember, the red, blue, and
Trying
green
to
text.
combine them all
Yeah.
to get it to work.
Unfortunately, the agritourism text is going to have to wait.
Sure.
And perhaps this might,
Our goal, and
Yeah.
because we were trying to get it out at the town so that the towns could start regulating uses in the shoreline zone. 2032, and that, if we get it through November County Board, and then immediately following that, we can send out a memo to those three towns, tell them, hey, and that come January 1st, we're not gonna be doing this. And then they at least have a month they can create, and that's so that they're ready come
Yeah,
January.
we do a lot of their ordinances too, because they refer to Polk County to do
Even
stuff.
tight at that.
Yeah.
so yeah, they need a little heads up. And then that's the thing, potentially we could continue to work on the subdivision and condo plats along with agritourism and combine those up later this winter or early spring, right? So
That speaker will come on the ag tourism, which is related to this travel trailer stuff too.
In our public hearing that we held here a month ago, that was only on park models and town zoning
The town
stuff,
zoning stuff,
and
yeah.
the condo plat stuff, and was
Wasn't
going
it?
to have another public hearing.
They have, okay.
and to segregate those four initiatives, yeah.
4 different things. Okay. All right, so on the travel trailers, after our public hearing, we didn't change too much, did you? Change anything?
So, the guy that made the public comment though, and that, it sounds like, his travel trailer that he bought won't meet any standards. Cause it's got a hitch that's not removable. It's got its own gray water and black water tanks. So, I mean, it sounds like it's a travel trailer. I haven't personally seen it. We are trying to go through. We had a recent case down on Horse Lake and that, down by Nye and that, where somebody bought a very similar park model, living it. Immediately, the day that they placed it on the property, boom, phones were ringing, town of Osceola was getting calls, building inspector was getting calls, and that, so it is something that people really.
What am I?
Oh, I know about that one. I heard about that one the other day. And then they added the camper
I
too,
think I
didn't
can
they?
get one
Did they pull in a camper too? Yeah. I just heard about that one.
Yeah, I'd already bought the trailer, and that, I talked to her before I was gone there on my trip, and that, order that wasn't allowed, but, still already had it ordered, said she had spent $55,000 or $60,000 on it. I wanted to live on it. It live in it full time. She did put in a sewer system, so she's got the seasonal permit that she could do from May 15th. One, and that if it qualified for a park model, if this provision was adopted, then she could leave it there year round, but still only living it from May to December. So.
And the camper she pulled on. So what will
Seriously.
happen with something like that? That's just,
So
that's.
right now, she has no permits, and that, so she's basically treated as a vacant lot. The trailer can remain there for 14 days, which is gonna come up like middle of next week. Start enforcement to take and have it removed.
The other one can stay, she just can live in it between May and December or whatever.
If she pulls a permit on it, you know.
If she pulls- Oh, because she has no permits.
The only permission that she's obtained in that is for the sanitaries. Yep. But yeah, it got to be a big deal in that because she's even looking at putting, or she was looking at putting this park model on a foundation and then that brings in the building inspector code. So, so he was all, you know, worked up about it too, because nothing's going to meet code in this thing. It's going to be permitted as a principal structure, single family dwelling, you know, and that the building code doesn't have an exemption unless it's HUD certified like a mobile home manufacturer. So it's just a cheaper version of a Wausau or a modular home. Well, it's one less tier of that, basically.
Let's hear about the hickory shed.
It's like a tiny house. It's kind of like a tiny house.
There's a guy living in
It's a she
two
shed.
hickory sheds in Farmington. Did he stay or did he move yet? There's another one in Farmington. But two of them sheds and they're living in them.
Is this not once again open can of worms if we let it go through?
It's, you know, the impetus was that gentleman who came, yet it still doesn't meet his needs. Does the committee still want to offer this opportunity or flexibility?
I want to walk,
Allow this.
I want to walk away from it.
Leave it the way it was.
Wipe it off the books and be done. I mean,
We've
we
got-
looked at it, I mean, you know, the individual came and made his pitch to us and we looked at it. And where we're at isn't going to work for that individual anyway, and I just think that,
He didn't know what he bought.
no, and I just think that it's a never-ending nightmare to go, keep going down, even if it worked for the gentleman. It's like, no, I need to,
We do have a provision in that for the property owners that have larger tracts of land. That because if they have 25 acres of land, they can have a travel trailer there year round. And that as long as it's got a sanitary system and it's 40 sanitary. So it's not a holding tank, it's not a conventional, it's not a mountain, it's just a privy travel trailer and a larger acre. So this would be only applying and that. And of course, a travel trailer or a park model are the same right now. So this would only apply to those lots that are less than 25. And of course, there's no tax base on them either.
I mean, I'm agreeing with Brad, and Bob and I talked about it, the guy on Butternut. I don't know if I can use this term, but he was scamming us. Because he didn't have a park model. He had a regular travel trailer, and he says, well, it's not really made to be taken from this campground to this campground. Well, it has a hitch, and it had the black water, it had everything. It was a trailer.
Yeah.
But then when you look back and start thinking about these park models between two nicer homes, these people don't really want it there.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking more, maybe we shouldn't have even went that direction.
yeah. Yeah, one of the, no, I agree. I mean, I think it's fine that we went down the road and looked at it, but sometimes you just look at it and walk away and,
It's like on Deer where they have, in the cove there where they have all those park models. Well, they're all together right there, but you don't see them in between two McMansions. You just don't, and they aren't gonna want them there.
That's how I got in there.
That's all that got in.
Some condominium. Same one as the easy living up there.
Oh, yeah?
I looked up park models on the internet to find out if there was a classification.
Yeah.
And there is, and it's removing the wheels and taking the hitch
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
But there's some pretty expensive park
Yeah,
models.
there,
Oh, yeah.
that are
there's some
pretty
pretty nice
fancy.
ones.
Yeah.
Furniture house, they're expensive.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not saying that they're totally wrong. I'm just saying maybe they just don't fit. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
term. I don't, I just think we ought
Well,
to.
that's
make
one of the
it-
ones we won't have to have any more fooling with it.
Well, when I researched it, you're right, and that is removing the hitch was one of the big things for a park model, and then not having those portable gray and black water tanks because they're hooking up to a site that already has sewer pumped in. So,
Yeah, the park is set up to have that. All the utilities, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Okay.
Well,
We'll mark that down on the calendar.
it's kind of rare.
Let's go 4-1.
I
I'll
had-
vote against just to make it 4-1.
I have so many losses.
We can't have.
The last hour and a half, I've lost everything.
I just want to build you back up.
Yeah.
I should vote no, just to wait.
so
We can take that out then.
So then I will plan on getting that on the county board for November then, the town provision.
Yeah.
And we'll submit the report prior to the county board, give you guys all a copy of that report and that stating that the park model provisions. So
What was the other? We'll have to deal with it again.
I'll save it. Save this time.
Save it. Well, at least then looked at it.
Maybe he's not the only one.
Well, that works, doesn't it, Jason? Add this in, don't take this out.
Yeah, travel trailers are one of our most common violations.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we do have quite a few people.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was just a ton of Clayton.
I'm sure he did.
And there is, and you get into the heating systems and it's not made. Even the park model, still only the wall, not insulated on the bottom. No problem.
Fish shacks are better.
But it was a
Oh,
good
yeah.
dialogue to have, a discussion to go through, so we understood it a lot more.
And we have a lot of travel trailer provisions. I think we do have more than most counties. I think most counties say, no, it's gonna be at a campground, you know, so. We do have options out there, you know, that seasonal thing. We do have quite a few people that do take advantage of that. Because they're in the transition, they just spent all their money on the lot. They don't have the money saved up to build that cabin or that home yet. You know, so and what we've seen it used for is 2 to 3 to 5 years, you know, and that to take and build a new home. So, so some of the ones that have been renewed the most, that they're building new homes. Kind of a nice feature. Okay.
So what do you got coming up? Do you have any public hearings coming up? for the
Public
next month?
hearing on the 17th,
Okay.
but nothing on the 3rd. And then for your November, not to get ahead of us, but to get to the work plan, you guys had an ascent demo and next generation 911. I've given like a couple of different ascent demos, you know, in that, so I don't know if you want to hear that again. But I was thinking that we could maybe put that more into like a sewer maintenance program and kind of showing how like the pumpers report and kind of what we're doing with that
I
program.
like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to take and kind of give you a heads up on what's going on in our office on that. And then Brad and that with the GIS, can give us a pretty good idea with the next gen 911 stuff, go over some of the gridded addressing. I can propose, or I can bring some of the address changes that we've done throughout the years. Changing and then try to comply with next gen, or try to get prepared. Those are kind of those two agenda items that possibly.
Well, when we're not jam full, okay. Thank you.
Eric's coming up.
Take a short break. How long is your presentation? 20?
No, not even 10.
Let's take a short, let's just quick and do it. We know you added a page, so we figured at least 15.
Oh, I didn't even add a
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I will say with Starware is much. I mean, if it goes down, can you make a phone call? I don't, but somebody does, and they're right on. You know, it isn't like CenturyLink where 25,000 aren't out.
Yeah.
It's not an outage.
They yelled at us. That is
Oh, we were going through something.
Here all day.
Meeting back off. All set to go?
Set to go.
All right, good. Thanks for having me again. I wanted to follow up on a project that we worked on that you're familiar with, the Wapagasset Watershed Well Water Testing Study. And we've kind of wrapped things up, and I want to give you some of the high points of that project. Kind of step back first with the project summary. Again, this was a grant-funded project with the Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection funding through the SEG Innovation Grant, and that was a new grant that was available in 2021, and we were fortunate enough to receive funding for it, to the tune of $10,500. Our goal was to update dated county well water test data and inform citizens of well water quality, and implement practices that prevent groundwater contamination. This was a completely voluntary project, so we solicited for volunteers and invited them to sample through a mailing that went out within the focus area. We mailed a total of 589 letters. Our goal was to receive 100 samples, and we achieved 87. So we nearly reached our goal. We provided guidance on taking well tests. We had a lot of conversations with the volunteers that wanted a well test, instructing them on how to take these well tests, and when they received their results, we interpreted those well tests. We provided a webinar on the importance of the quality of groundwater and provided well owners the opportunity to connect with experts on the topic. So Kevin Masaryk, the well water specialist, groundwater specialist at UW-Stevens Point, was gracious enough to set aside some time to put on about an hour-long webinar for the participants that were interested enough to attend. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but it was very good, and I can give you the link if you're interested in sitting in on that, downloading it at another date. Through this, we also wanted to create a dialogue with ag producers on what conservation practices protect groundwater health, and we did that. We had conversations with a number of ag producers that were interested in cover crops, about covers, and how it helps improve water quality, groundwater quality specifically. And for those that wanted to take it a step further and actually implement some cover crops on their operations, we provided them with an incentive payment to do so and help them offset some of the costs, get them started and making some of the connections where they can find seed, best practices, and how they can get it seeded, and timing. We initiated conversations and installation of nearly 175 acres of cover crops, and we're still working with some of those producers now. And we'll see if all of them get the covers in, but still having some conversations. That's kind of the last part of this project. Next slide, please. So there was a request at the last meeting, and thanks for your patience in postponing this presentation, but there was a request to have sampling locations placed over land use, and we did that. The graphic on the left is our project area. The circle in red just
identifies where that watershed, Wapagasset Lake, is located in our county. And by and large, it runs southeast from Centuria, west side of Keeneland. Watershed size is about 34,000 acres. And has a wide variety of land use. Over half of it is agriculture or grassland crops. So hopefully that's helpful to show you the sampling distribution and kind of where it falls in land cover types. Slide, please. Okay, so we offered up the homeowners package for well water analysis. And the homeowners package includes pH, conductivity, alkalinity, total hardness, nitrate, chloride, saturation index, coliform bacteria, and if coliform bacteria was identified in these well tests, they also sampled E. coli, which is the harmful bacteria. Kind of interesting up top, they also took some additional information on the well information sample sheets that I thought was kind of neat to include here. For those that participated, they identified the reason for the test. 70% were curious. They wanted to know what their well tests were. And they were interested enough to participate. So 70%, I thought that was a good number. The next one, kind of shows us the frequency of testing, lack thereof. About 50% of the participants hadn't had a test in over 10 years, or they didn't know when it was. So 25% each categories. Kind of nice to form 25% of those people well testing and give them a test since they hadn't know when the last test was, or maybe had never had a well test. See problems, people identify color, taste, odor as some issues and maybe the reason why they tested. And some of the other questions there. Well depth in the treatments. Next slide. So the three tests that we were interested in seeing were nitrates and chloride, and of course the coliform bacteria. These are the tests for nitrates. And I'll say first, I was pleasantly surprised at the amount of wells that ended up testing over the public health threshold of 10. I thought 6% or 5 tests over that threshold was pretty good. That's below the state average. So I was happy to see that. And again, water with a test above 10 parts per million, we need to be careful about consumption or pregnant women. Are there any questions regarding this first slide? We'll see a few more like this, but you can kind of see that the higher testing wells and nitrates were on the northwest portion of the watershed. And of course, there were a few down in the south end too, but by and large, most of the wells tested well below the public health. The next slide is coliform bacteria. And we did have a few hits. 12 of the 87 wells tested were positive for coliform bacteria. And that's not an indicator of land use or anything like that. It could be a pathway flaw in the system that's allowing bacteria. So it also could have been contamination within the sampling of the water itself. So, but when it does test positive for coliform bacteria, they want to take it one step further and make sure that it's not bad stuff. and we didn't have any E. coli out of those 12 bacteria positives.
Just real quick, did any of those test again for chloroform? To see if it was a bad test sample? Did not.
Some of them did.
Some did. Okay.
Yep, without a doubt, some did, and they asked us about them. I don't have any numbers as to how many did. In the results mailing, it was recommended that they test, and it was kind of up to them. They knew the drill at that point. They could grab a test either from our health department or contact the Stevens Point lab, and they would mail them a kit. And they could
So it just, sometimes it only takes a finger on the inside of a cap. Mosquito wing in it.
It could be as simple as you touching the
I've
cap.
done some, and it's that simple. So I mean, it's a lot of that.
You're making me feel better because 2 of these red dots are right by where I live.
Well, that, and it could be the way they took it, or sometimes the wellhead's got a crack in it and stuff. It
Yep,
gets dust
exactly.
and stuff. Spider falls in it, and that's it. All it takes.
Or the well head isn't high enough off the ground either. Not good practice to have that thing buried. I think it's code, it needs to be at
12
least,
inches.
yeah, 12 inches above the surface of the ground, yeah. And you don't want anything growing around it either, like landscaping. People like to put hostas around them. That's kind of
It's
a
something.
So
That's your well. That's got it.
No, I had mine tested and mine tested fine last year. Yeah. They-
Um, if I were to venture to guess, I would say 50% of these tested again. So,
They were at least new enough to test it again to see what it was.
and obviously if it came back positive again, then they might want to talk to a plumber and have the system looked at. Okay, next slide, please, on the chloride. Chloride is another test that can indicate land use, specifically salt use. And there's no health standard for this. And there's no real health risk associated with chloride. Just oftentimes makes the water have a salty taste. And levels above 250 parts per million result in that salty taste. So it's more of a yeah, exactly, comfort, and taste, and things like that. So we only had one that was over 200. So everybody else was pretty good. Next slide, please. So these are some of the resources that we made available throughout this project. Obviously, we talked about the individual results mailing and interpreted well tests for all of the participants. The webinar link for that hour-long groundwater webinar, I would encourage you to watch that. It's very good. I enjoyed doing it. Kevin was really great from Stevens Point. All of the well tests that we took here will go into the statewide database at Stevens Point, and so they'll get added. Polk County did not have much information in there previously, so we hope to build upon that database to make it available to our citizens to have good groundwater or better groundwater data for our county. What's going into that well water data. And we had many one-on-one conversations with citizens. Had a lot of good conversations. The next steps. Slide, please. We hope to keep this momentum as part of our land and water resource management plan through 2029. So we hope to keep doing some watershed well tests moving forward. We've applied for another SEG Innovation Grant 2022. And we've also put in a funding request for the 2022 county budget, $10,000. And with any luck, we could do 2 of those, 2 watersheds next year. And to let you know, the next watersheds on the list, moving down in priority, would be the Apple River flowage and the Upper Trade River. So those would be the two that we would likely do next year. If funded for two watersheds.
What was the other one?
The Apple River flowage, the Upper Trade River. Upper Trades northwest of Luck.
So when would we know if we get the
Good question. I would hope by November, first part of December. I'd have to look back as to when we got our award letter last year for the site grant, but keep in mind that came out late, so it might not be a good indicator. I would bet we would know by the end.
So then, like Wapak Acid was, what was it? 34,500 acres. How big are, any idea how big Apple River and Upper Trade is?
Well, they're both comparable. I would say, and this is just a guess.
But I mean, close to that same size?
Yes.
Because I know just,
Slightly larger, probably
Okay.
slightly larger.
because at some point, we're gonna run into something that are pretty small. If memory serves me right. I mean, then at that point, we wouldn't necessarily be looking for 100 samples. And that same $10,000 could maybe do 2 watersheds instead of, I mean, if we've got a 20,000 acre watershed, probably not gonna get 100 samples.
No,
You know,
there's
out of,
42 of them, but some are pretty, or just corners.
Right.
Yeah, we just pulled part of it. So we would likely lump that into a larger watershed. Yeah, we wouldn't be doing 42 at the level of $10,000 and 100 samples. I figure we have about 17 to 20 watersheds that we would do much like this, and our goal would be 100 samples, larger watersheds, and watersheds that we contain all of that watershed within our county boundaries.
How many watersheds do we have?
Like 42, yeah, 42 total.
We were talking about that. Numbers were flying around.
Yeah, and that's at the hydrologic unit code 12. 10s are larger, 8s are larger yet. 12s are in that range of 25 to 50,000.
so we got 87 here. How many did we get last year for Folsom?
Easily 100.
Easily 100.
Yep. Balsam Lake, we had a much better return rate for whatever reason. And we actually had more interest than we had samples to offer up. So
Probably a higher population in the Balsam Lake watershed than in Wapagasset, or not necessarily?
Closer.
yeah, that's true. Convenience could be part of it. I would say population is going to likely be similar. I almost think that Balsam would be less, but
Okay, people don't think they're in that watershed. They don't know what a watershed is. So when you
Right.
look at this and these other lakes to the north, they think we got nothing to do with watersheds. Why are you coming? You get
Right.
in the northwest corner up there.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah, when you
people
get
don't
up
think
on
they're in
that
this.
Centuria Village limits.
Yeah, they just go like, no, we're not even in it. That's why some of them I don't think yes.
we had a lot of conversations, right? A lot of conversations with people that didn't even know where the watershed boundaries were. So that's all part of it too.
Yeah, that's the confusion because you get that far north and you say Wapagasset, they
There's many of them that were right on that east line that could swear that they were in the Apple River watershed
Yeah.
because they're 2 miles away, but the Wapagasset watershed extends that far.
look at just the size of it. Some of the ends of it, just people don't think of it. That's a lot. Now, in that, also I had a question here on when they do the wells down there at Stevens Point. Now, all the new wells, do they put on that study too? Are the new wells in Stevens Point or is that on the different website? That's the DNR website. Is that included into this one?
Oh, the new constructed well.
Any construction well has to be on the DNR site, a unique well number.
Yeah.
Is that in on this?
We looked at that last year. I don't think
Right, I don't think that those new well tests for the new constructed wells, I don't think those go on the Stevens Point website. I would expect they don't. I think that the
Don't you
well
think that
tests
would
that
help
they
them
get
keep
on
up?
that point are just quality type tests.
And I mean, would that be something we could look at and put on there too, that there's this many, say there was
I
40 new
recall
wells
there
in
was
this watershed.
personal identifiable information with the DNR records that problematic for the,
Every, they just go by an address. You're supposed to be able to look any of these new wells up and see what's there.
You can. There, DNR does have a site where you can look at wells constructed after, I think it's 1980. Yeah. And most all the new ones are on there, but they do not disclose quality, well, water quality information on those. It's just construction report. Yeah,
So it only be
casing
depth.
size, water.
It would only be depths and pretty much groundwater depth and some of that are rock. 300-foot well or a 50.
there's no reason for that to interface with the UW Stevens Point.
There's a reason to know what's there.
Normally there, but for water quality,
We have to test for water quality. You have to, it has to pass.
You do, but I'm not certain where those tests go. I think they just go to give
Must
the
be
well a
private or
pass or a fail, and I don't know where it goes from there.
Is that, if we had 40 new wells, it'd be nice to know that. Let's get in this area. Somebody got rid of an old one, then what it tested. Tested. Yeah. Just have it tested. Website. Let's see
you
this.
share those 42 hucks. How many of them are within these significant areas within the county boundaries that we would look at providing this outreach program?
The upper trade goes into Burnett County, doesn't it? Is that what you told me earlier? That flows to the northwest? So if the CAFOs come in, our water's cleaning, going north. Is it coming to Polk County? The dirty water. That's, no, it is, but it's scary that that water table is moving that way.
So in our ranking
So there's
model,
no markers, but I mean, it's weird how the water.
our ranking model, when we rank these watersheds in our county as far as priority, we needed to prioritize our work, right? So we gave more points to watersheds that we held in our county entirety. Points given was 14. So I'm going to count all the watersheds that we have 14 points. That means they're all full. We have 12. And we have 12 that we hold in their entirety. And there's some that, a small portion is outside our county. Give them 12 points. Seven of those. We up to 18, 19. So we also have another level of 10 points, which means the majority of that watershed is within our county. We're at 22, 23. So, yeah, about half.
So like when you started with Balsam Lake and Tropic Acid, were they considered to be perhaps paper and in theory the worst? Or how did they get chosen as, how did they get ranked as 1 through 47? I mean, other than Okay. You know, but how was the decision made that Balsam was first, Wapo was second?
You all part of that, all the different decision criteria? I mean, that,
Well, Doug was a part of that. But I'm glad you asked that because we can cover that here. We had a number of parameters that we looked at and gave points to these watersheds, depending on where they were with these parameters. And we did factor in partnerships and our likelihood for success and good participation in our programming. So we gave that a little bit of weight as well. These watersheds weren't necessarily the most impaired. They were the ones where we could make the most progress. So,
Populated.
yeah, population was, yep, and again, percent within our watershed, the ones that, or within our county, the ones that we could fully control, work in without partnering with other counties. Some of the criteria that we ranked was phosphorus loading. We also gave points for how many impaired waters were within these watersheds. We gave a weighted number to the number of partner groups, lake associations, protection and rehabilitation districts, could be supporting groups that have interest in water quality and habitat management, things like that. Percent of acres in a water quality management area. So basically how many bodies of water were there and how many sensitive sites fell within these watersheds. For those that had more acres of water quality management area. Watersheds that ended in a lake, high population, got higher points. Like Horse Lake, Horse Creek, like Balsam Lake. Stream order, that doesn't mean much, but that's just ranking of percent agricultural land cover, it gives points. Number of potential livestock facilities, so those that had lots of livestock also did get higher points for agricultural operations that we knew of. We also weighted groundwater contamination susceptibility, some of our mapping. So those areas that had higher susceptibility to groundwater contamination got higher points. Lake development, those watersheds that had lots of lakes that were highly developed got higher. Highly erodible soils, outstanding resource waters and exceptional resource waters, those that have good water quality to protect, we wanted higher. Depth to bedrock, some of primary and secondary views, things like that. All got. So we got together as a group and added up all those points. And obviously, higher points ranked top. And just for you, Balsam Lake ranked 1, Horse Lake, Horse Creek 2, Wapagassa 3, Apple River Flowage 4, Upper Trade River 5, 6, Great River, and so on. So we have areas that we can prioritize our work and give us somewhere to start.
This is before the two committees were put together, wasn't it? Doug, because weren't you on the planet? They did this. To have a separate committee. Subcommittee.
This would have been in 2018 and 2019, those citizen advisory committees for this.
For land and water, okay.
Um,
Right before Tim Riddle left. You were, Doug, you were on that for the Department of Citizen Advisory.
What?
Were you on that committee?
Yeah.
Were we?
You were,
You were.
Oh,
the land and water.
oh, yeah,
The rep
okay.
from this
Their-
committee.
Their master plan rewrite.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's where. Okay, so it's in the
Yeah,
mayor, you were,
I was there.
you were there.
In Doug's defense, he wasn't able to make all of the meetings because of his busy schedule on county board and committees like that. But enjoyed having him when he could. Thanks for your interest in this. Appreciate those questions and how we came to ranking our watersheds.
So is it okay to share this information then with like?
Oh, gosh, no. This is highly trying times. Keep telling.
I mean, I think we should. Like, I know the Deer Lake Conservancy would love to see stuff like this. Oh,
Anybody but them.
So I mentioned the CAFO people that we are trying to get ahead. They have a benchmark. That out there, they're trying to do a benchmark of all the county land in watershed. Is it polluted already or is it gonna get polluted? At least to show that we're doing something to that. So it is.
It's the sewer installers that pollute.
Yeah. No, we're pretty good.
I won't touch that one.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Mark is up. Are you ready for that?
I don't have to do much talk today.
Yeah, you're safe today.
Under forestry today, I guess it's still morning. Item number eight, I don't know if you talked about this already at the beginning of the meeting. That is no longer an option. Homeowners going a different direction. It's on hold, so there's nothing to talk about in terms of Sterling land purchases at this point. So moving back to A, I'd like to introduce Rebecca Ludke. She came all the way from Merrill, Wisconsin this morning. She is with Wisconsin County Forestry Association. And pretty much she is going to give an overview of the role that the Wisconsin County Forestry Association plays, not only with Polk County, but the rest of the counties that have county forest acreage, and her important role of developing partnerships with the DNR and other entities. With that, Rebecca, the floor is yours. And welcome you here. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I will certainly appreciate your time this morning. I know you guys are very busy, so we'll try to make this short and sweet. But so what I handed around is just an information packet that we have from the association, and then my PowerPoint, the slides that we're going to go through. So just some general information, we'll go through some basic history of county forests and how and where we're at today with county forests. Talk a little bit about the association and what we do to support you guys from the county level. As Mark said, the Wisconsin County Forest Association is, you guys are Polk County is a member of our association. So basically I work for you. I work closely with Mark and the other forest administrators around the state on all things forestry in the state, and really just be an advocate and a champion for county forests. So we'll start. So just a brief history. So as you probably know, there was massive timber operations that came through the state in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Wisconsin actually led timber production in the country in 1900, but by 1915, all of the forests were gone. And at that time, afterwards, there was this massive attempt to convert that land, that cut over land, to farmland. And in northern half of the state, that initiative basically failed because it wasn't conducive to farmland. And really, a lot of the acres that were cut over went tax delinquent. So by 1927, 4.5 million acres had become tax delinquent at least one time, which basically became a burden upon the counties, leaving them cash poor. So, and then in the 1920s, the state legislature introduced the forest crop law, which is a precursor to the county forest law as we know it today. And then the county reserve law as well allowed the counties to acquire those tax delinquent lands for the purpose of establishing county forests. So by first county forest was Langlade County. They were established in 1928, and there was an initial wave of 4 counties that entered into that law by 1930 or so with 38,000 acres. And so, and then so by 1938, we had 24 county forests that were established, 1.7 million acres. And then in 1963, was when the county forest law came into fruition, 2811, as you guys probably well know. And then the County Forest Association was established in 1968, basically to help with the growing pains of establishing county forests and what that meant to the broader picture for forestry in general. So this is 2811. This is basically the foundation on which county forest lands are established, and their management strategy. And so this section of law 2811 basically provides the basis for a permanent program for county forests. They are to optimum production of timber products, forest products, as well as recreational opportunities, wildlife, all that stuff is in this law for multiple use, for the biggest impact to the state, for the greatest good. And in return, the state is to compensate the counties for that public use. So basically all this says is the state is saying to you guys as county forests, we want you to provide all of this stuff for all of these things, all of the citizens and visitors of Wisconsin, and in turn, we are going to compensate you for all of this work that you do. And then they also provide some compensation to the county or to the townships as well. So this is our system today. We have 30 counties for just over 2.4 million acres. We are the largest public land base in Wisconsin, which is good. You can see the graph on the right, how large of a piece of the pie that the counties collectively have for public lands in the state. We are unique to the nation is that the county forest lands are governed by 2811. Forestry is the #1 employer in 10 counties, and the #1 output in 14 counties, and it currently sustains over 64,000 jobs total in the state. And this is precursor to the Verso Mill in Wisconsin Rapids going down, being shuttered. So these numbers are obviously going to shift as we go forward here. And lastly, just an exclamation point that Adams County became the 30th county forest last June. So that was great news. So when I mean unique to the nation, if you didn't know, there's 5.4 million acres of county forest lands in the nation. 95% of that is in between Wisconsin and Minnesota. So a lot of that land, county land, is right here in the Midwest. And then Oregon, Michigan, New York, Washington, Pennsylvania take up the remaining 5%. The unique thing about Wisconsin is that the 2.4 million acres that we have here in the state are actually owned by the counties. In Minnesota, who actually has a 2.8 million acres, that is actually owned by the state. Those are state lands, but the county manages them. So Wisconsin has this really unique opportunity to where counties can manage their own land. They own the land, they provide all of the services, and the county forest system in Wisconsin is like no other. Obviously, we talked about the largest public land holder, their county-owned lands. There's this very robust dovetail relationship with the DNR and then also our association. So this is just basically a map of the county forest. As you can see, the 30 counties there are highlighted in green, with the darker green being the actual acres of county forest. And then on the right is our graph. Obviously, you guys know Polk County is just over 17,000 acres. Our largest county is Douglas County up in the northwest, 280,000. And Adams County, like I mentioned before, came into law with just 140 acres. And so the reason why they wanted to be established as a county forest is multi-purpose, but mainly they were having issues with watershed quality that they wanted to kind of protect lands for water quality as also recreation. Just like Polk County, they have this huge influx of weekend warriors and summer people, and they don't have a lot of public land, and so they wanted to provide this service for recreational opportunities. So they're looking at it from a couple different ways. Also, being a county forest law allows them to gain access to the Knowles-Nelson Stewardship Program to buy and acquire lands. This is our timber production over the 30 counties in 2020. I'll just keep it brief. I just wanted to note in both graphs, the lower left is the counties are in orange, and in the upper right, the counties are in red. By far and away, the counties collectively are the big dogs as far as timber production in the state. far and above beyond what the state does, far and above what the National Forest Service does. So they have a big say, a big impact on state, on forestry in the state in general, which we're very thankful for. You can just click through this slide until you get to the bottom. Recreation opportunities, as it's probably not a surprise, but being the largest public landholder in the state, we are also the largest land trail user group or trail owner group, trail manager group. We provide nearly 1,800 miles of ATV trails, well over 9,000 miles of snowmobile trails, lots of boat landings, as you guys well know, non-motorized recreation with the Dancer, as well as the Ice Age Trail, and just lots of recreational use in Wisconsin on the county forest lands, which is it's a big component, as well as timber production. You can click, yeah, you can click forward. That's okay. You can click forward through this one too. So forest certification, as you guys know, you just went through a forest certification audit this summer, which thanks to Mark and Paul's great work, we had a really good audit between Polk, Chippewa, Clark, and Eau Claire. We have been the counties have been highly touted as the model for public management systems in the United States, and that's largely driven by folks like Mark's work and the DNR's work and your guys' work as a committee to support that effort. So forest certification is a big deal on county lands, just as it is on state lands. So referencing back to 2811, where I said that the state basically says, counties, you are to provide X, Y, and Z of all of this stuff, and we will compensate you in return. This is what I am referencing. The state, the DNR, has fiscal responsibility to you guys as counties. The administration grant program, just under $1.5 million, so pays for part of Mark's salary and fringes. There's also loans, discounts, the aid to towns as well, and different other sorts of things that the DNR financially supports counties for their work. Outside of financial compensation or financial support, the DNR also provides technical support. So as you guys well know, Paul is your county forest liaison. There is a county forest liaison for every county. They provide X number of hours per county for a number of things. And then also the DNR hires or employs specialists that are also for your use, whether it be forest health, wildlife, or biologists of some degree. They are there to support county forests as well. So we'll just go into WCFA a little bit. So WCFA is actually a non-for-profit, again, established in 1968. We're kind of a quasi-government organization. We have a board of directors, and most of our directors are people that, like yourselves, that sit on county committees or county boards that basically tell me what I need to do. They're my board. They set our work plan, our strategic plan. We have a couple of staff now. Myself as the executive director. I've got an assistant and a certification coordinator, and we also have a contract lobbyist. So we have a contract lobbyist down in Madison. I also am a registered lobbyist. So basically, we can take up issues that affect all of the county forests or forestry stuff and forestry issues in general in the state, go down to the capital and advocate on behalf. We are member and grant funded. So your dues, which I kindly appreciate every year, support that effort. And basically, our purpose and objectives, the association provides a forum for all the forest administrators and the county forest staff to deal with issues collectively rather than each individual county dealing with stuff on their own. They're able to network and able to collaborate on a whole host of issues. And Mark is very active in those conversations, which we greatly appreciate. I also advocate, like I said, on your behalf with legislation and other issues affecting forestry. in Wisconsin. And then also be a liaison and serve as representative, again, on your behalf with the council. I sit on the Governor's Council in Forestry, have a really close relationship with the DNR, have a close relationship with the Wisconsin Counties Association. So we, again, just advocate and are a liaison on your behalf. And honestly, just be a champion for county forestry and sustainable forestry in Wisconsin in general. So I just wanted to touch briefly on our legislative and lobbying efforts that we had just this past state budget. These are a couple of highlights, and we can scroll through these. You guys probably, yeah, you can go to the next one, sorry. The loss of the forestry mill tax a few years ago now created this other opportunity through GPR funding, which needs to be sustained for all of those benefits to the counties to remain whole. And just because that's not a dedicated tax anymore, we need to advocate for that GPR funding for the DNR to remain whole so that you guys also remain. So that's the big one that probably came about this budget cycle was the county forest acre share payments. So every year you guys are obligated to give the townships 30 cents, not you guys, I should say that, the DNR on your behalf gives the counties, saying this all wrong, the DNR on behalf of you guys provides the townships with 30 cents an acre for every acre, right? And it's prorated by townships on they have within their boundaries. It has been 30 cents since the mid 1980s, so well over 35 years. While they do the same for state lands, that state land acre share payment has gone up with inflation year after year and kind of kept pace with things, while a county forest acre share payment has stayed stagnant. So we worked hard to advocate for just a little bit of increase, and so we were successful in that venture. So what was passed in the budget is those acre share payments are going to be increased to 63 cents an acre, which is 1.5 million acres, or $1.5 million over the biennium for the townships. And I should also note that the counties, you guys are also statutorily obligated to return 10% of your timber revenues, your gross timber revenues back to the townships. Correct me if I'm wrong, you're up to 30%, which is very generous. A lot of counties do go above and beyond that 10%, but that's the minimum that you guys have to return back to the townships. Probably very familiar with the Nelson Stewardship Program. The annual allotment for county forests right now is $5 million. In the new budget, it went down to $3 million, but we feel that we're probably pretty safe with that allocation. And right now, they're only available to be used for land acquisitions. So it was just important for us to advocate on Knowles Nelson in general. We feel it's a really good investment for Wisconsin, and the rate of returns is a lot higher because you guys manage lands, you provide income back to the townships. You know, you help provide jobs as far as contracting and logging and trucking and things like that to come back to your local. But, and then this is just a couple of other items that we've been advocating for recently. Financial assistance due to the Verso closure. We are still heavily involved with legislature and anybody else who will listen to us about good markets, maintaining good markets in the state. It's important for you guys. It's important for our forest health. So, you know, Verso was a big hit to the state, and we're hopeful. We still have some hope that we can turn that around. Anything that comes of infrastructure, especially town roads, you know, any type of grant funding that is available for recreational uses, trail uses, that type of stuff, we advocate for. Then just recently, the direct sale limit, we're advocating for a change there. Hopeful that will go through this fall. That direct sale limit, basically you guys can sell lands over the counter rather than on public auction if they're below $3,000 as far as the limit. We're advocating that go up to $10,000 just to create some flexibility for Mark and the other administrators to sell wood and get wood managed. And then anything, of course, to do with 2811 for hyper. So as we've probably gathered, our relationship with the association's relationship with the 30 counties, we're here to serve the counties. We foster that relationship as much as we can. But then we also have this relationship with the DNR. I have a direct line to the state forester and the DNR secretary's office, again, to advocate on your behalf, be a champion for us. Really, really, really good relationship with the DNR from the association standpoint. So obviously, and then the counties deal with the DNR at the local level, through the biologists and things like that. So it's this really kind of interesting network of forestry that we deal with the DNR, but it's working well. We're happy with where we're at. Foster that relationship. So I think that was my last slide. My contact information is here as well as in your packets. But any questions or comments?
Can you remind us how many acres we have in the forest?
1,100.
Thank you for your opportunity. Thank you for the time and the opportunity to come speak with you, just to give you an oversight of what we do on your behalf. Mark's recognized relationship. So certainly I'm here to help you guys if there would ever be a need or a concern. So
I have one other question. On slide 5, where it talks about the SFI and FSC certifications. So Polk County, it looks like it's SFI certified only. So is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a good thing. Some counties are dual certified just based on markets. Certification is generally market driven, so depending on wood or products that you sell off of your lands kind of drives what certification. SFI is I would say probably the easier certification body to be a part of. So that's a plus, that's a thumbs up. It's certainly no hindrance to be only SFI.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I remember we went through that page by page. Then
Gonna
SFI
talk
was,
about Sterling.
What?
Mark was gonna
Oh, he
No, he
fell
said
apart.
it fell apart. He
fell
said,
apart.
I couldn't hear
he
that.
said that right away.
That fell apart.
Felt like Jim Edgel there for a minute.
Yep. Oh, okay. Yeah.
You gotta sit closer to the front like me.
Yeah.
Worked on it.
I forgot what those questions, I forgot about.
That we went to them, remember, because I asked, anywhere, then I said,
Yeah.
then we had to go through.
Yeah.
a half hour. All right, cut us loose. You got 5 minutes.
Catching loose, yeah. Let's see. Well, next meeting, I will bring those ARPA requests, just building off what Vince was referring to in terms of the process.
Budget stuff.
If you'd like for me to, again, bring those additional funding requests for the county board's consideration, those items we talked about this morning, I can bring those forward. I did want to say, we did find a champion of agritourism to come and speak at our November 17th environmental services meeting. Her name is Sylvia Burgos Topless. And Kim, I think that's the lady you were referring to. Amory, yeah, that when they were hosting the governor, she'll be coming to talk about agritourism to provide more education as we move forward with those provisions. In regards to the agenda, placeholder for Mo, probably have him.
Got the tax deed land that should be coming up. That should
Oh, that's a great question. We received the checks for the highest bids on Monday.
Oh, on those.
Yeah, so we already made that transaction. I did the title work. And yesterday Carol, get them recorded at ROD. So they're being recorded right now, so we'll be sending those deeds to those new owners.
And now the tax deed land, stuff that we took back, that should be coming up.
That's next summer.
But we never did it this year.
I've sworn that's what Amanda.
Explain how we were gonna do it, the extra
But
45
we
days.
were gonna start that process next summer.
Waiting another year. Skipping a year then.
Yeah, we haven't looked at any of this. I mean, unless we didn't get any, and then that's.
She's working with those, there was a referendum last year, the pandemic.
Couldn't pass it. We said, no, you still had to pay, because if we pass that, they'd have to pay in October and December, so we said no. Oh, no.
You know, she's working with those folks that aren't delinquent on a payment plan. That starts in July.
That's normal. That started
That
back
starts
in
in
July.
July. I will,
Should find out. 'Cause there was 200 and something. She wasn't there the day I went in there. I was kind of happy. I wanted to see what that amount was left after these payments. That account's got to get pretty decent for us for once. It's way down.
I'll touch base with Amanda and get an update on that.
Yeah, we should have that, because that's, we're getting late.
For some reason, I'm under the impression
These weren't tax deeds. These were Vince's responsibility to go through the 800 parcels in a policy that somebody took from me. But I showed it.
Yeah,
But that policy said by August 1st, you go through all these and see if we need these stuff. So now we're kind of caught up, because you went through it
that's how we identified those 5 properties.
and identified those, plus you found all the boat landings. It's kind of the reason too. So we found the 8 boat landings. The other pieces of land that didn't sell. Yep, that one.
Oh, yeah,
everybody
so,
knows why it didn't go for sale.
yeah, the committee directed me to reach out, remember that small 1/10 of an acre quarter lot in the village, Clear Lake, so I reached out to the village board, reached out to the neighbor thought it was his, so he paid for that transaction. Nominal fee, so that's cleaned up as well, and then the tribal land south of town, the tribe and I are working through that, and they're looking at doing the title work for that and the legal description. Looks like that transaction can be paid back to them. It's really the onus is on them. Sent them all the information. There's a little bit of a history behind there. I can talk offline. That, so.
Yep, the notes from when Amanda was here, September 15th, when she talked about, she said she sent out 230 notices, 130 had 100 had paid, so it was down to 130. She was giving him 1 month, sending out notifications on September 1st, sent them out, gives them 1 month to pay payment plans. She said there's 50 to 75 parcels on payment plans and about 300,000 in back taxes still.
We might be doing that this winter.
Should have some.
That does remind me, maybe we're looking at January.
It sounds like it.
Is it January?
Otherwise, we're gonna bring that back up in that 45 days. I'm gonna advocate for that. You're gonna go right to the state. The day it comes in, you don't pay, it's done.
Yeah.
I think, because we haven't done any. I mean, last year we did a few, we had, some were slivers again that,
From the
we
past.
finished the Woodley Dam stuff and that. Those, that last year, yeah. And surveying stuff. Now, this year we haven't done any tax.
I will.
Because these 5 were through this other process.
That was a different. That's a healthy process to do periodically.
Well, that shows what our assets we have. We can tell everybody how much we really have. We don't know this other stuff. We got so much money, we don't know what to do with it.
So yeah, I'll look into that. As far as next meeting, again, back to Mo, I'll have Mo back. Tim, probably not. If there is any update, I'll let you know. Jason, there's no public hearing. He
I
did
already said there
offer,
was one.
11/17.
Oh.
A public hearing, yeah,
Yeah, 11/17.
but not on the next meeting.
The next, okay.
third, talking about November 3rd.
The cattail be on there. Put that on.
What's that?
Put the cattail on there. Under number 9. Give Kim
Okay.
something to do.
We gotta have something on the agenda, right?
Yeah, we gotta have that cattail on there. So that we can send it
Did
to
you ask the
DNR.
DNR secretary to come up and speak personally on that? Right, Kim?
Yes. What, why, and where?
You should have asked that question of the governor.
I had a couple, I knew better. Shake his hand. Steve is gonna bring that CSM stuff back. Discuss. I mean, on the condo flats and that CSM deal, are we gonna get those kind of next one or wait till the 17th? Just get them.
I think the 3rd's gonna be a little too early. I'll ask.
Okay. It's gonna be too early, wouldn't it? Because then we're gonna take, on zoning that B, we're gonna take them articles, not even do that.
You said it's gone.
That we're taking out. So then we just have the subdivision condo. CSM.
Well, he did offer up, a demonstration, the Ascent program for
Yes.
homeowners.
Yep.
He also talked about it, have a Brad, and this is important. That latest update of next gen 911. It's important.
Those two, yes.
And then also, I mean, we have been changing a lot of addresses.
And be also the one for the Wyoming too.
Radar?
He puts that-
Well,
You got a separate.
we have a
presentation.
proposal. We've already submitted administration, so I think at the next meeting, I'll have just we talked about last night, sort of like an elevator speech, what that
Yeah. Oh, okay.
project is. And
Sure.
we will answer questions on that. So that'll be part of the ARPA conversation. I know Jason did offer up, an update on address changes. We've been changing a lot of addresses, not many complaints. If you're interested, we could briefly talk about that.
Yep.
We got next gen 911, Ascent, bumper demonstration, right? And then address changes. Those are all within our work plan too, by the way.
Hope you didn't change any on Big Lake.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't remember its road, but
It's called Holmes Court. Got his name too? 604. Holmes Court. Joel had.
Oh, I know you. Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Are you making a proposal to change those again, Kim, or?
Yeah. It's never enough. No, it's the dual address thing. So it's
You had asked him about, maybe an update on the decon stations. I think they might be installed by the 3rd. You want Caitlin?
I think we should have Caitlin and Polk come in and do it because, Doug and those guys push that a little bit. And they got those signs and stuff to start putting them up. So hopefully, any lake association. And that it's in there.
Yeah.
And the invasive species went through last night,
Yes, sir.
the ordinance. So
Yes, sir.
with the signs there, if they get a few of them up, at least they have pictures and come and see how they.
Yeah, just a brief update. to,
Brief update that it's, they're gonna be up, for the fall season, plus be ready for spring then. Maybe it's Bone Lake look at that, or they were gonna do an actual spending spree.
They, at the annual meeting, which is in August, they had a vote and they're going with the pressurized.
Oh, they are? Oh,
It was at 25,000, over 40.
Oh, jeez.
They wanted two-sided because of volume of people.
volume, sure.
That I'll find out more because their meeting is Saturday morning.
Oh,
Yeah.
tell them we got the signs and stuff. Nice to be consistent that they did it like the other companies. So, all around, so same.
I thought they were in contact with Caitlin, but I don't.
Be nice to see that too. These pictures of it.
Yeah, so
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what I asked, that they take some pictures. So nice to get it out.
Half Moon was on the sheet for, I think they put down 35. Called the Polk Lake Management because I saw Half Moon on there at 35. Only had asked for at least be on the list.
Yeah, get on the list. Because, yeah, you gotta get power, everything. Power, water.
Yeah, they already have power at the
They have power. So
building.
that-
They do
But
have
they
a
need-
well, but it's not pressurized.
Land and water, what else would they have? Anything?
No, that's all, their stewardship award is coming up. I
Oh,
think we're
sure.
looking at December. And, we talked about formal presentation at county board, but I think we're gonna start here and see what you guys think. Do that presentation, I believe that's in the work. We have some nominees. One thing I just want to quickly update you on, I just heard from National Grid Renewables. Remember them?
Got it
Universe Solar,
this time.
I'm sorry.
They have the same name this time.
Right, yeah. I just want to let you know that they continue to communicate with us periodically, particularly when they hit the development points. And just let me know that they have received their written order for the solar project. In other words, they have the permit from the state, which finalizes the September verbal positive decision by the PSC. So in a nutshell, the permit process is really in their rear view mirror. Construction will begin in the winter of 2022. They are made it through the permit. So yeah, it looks like next meeting's heavy on education. You guys should, consider yourselves the most well-informed governing committee in Polk County government. Yeah. Try to educate. And want to learn more?
Clam ball.
That's right.
About any clam
Arguments here.
Yeah. We are doing a title search for the Clam Falls property. Dam. Under an exchange, it's a long story. That's gonna take a
It's
couple
all the way out
weeks.
to your fire pit, they said.
Yep, you're right.
It's like, nobody owns it, so we'll take it.
I'm sure the current owner knows exactly how much land. We're doing the title search, we'll rewrite the legal description, and then Steve and Karsten will hopefully be out there and survey those 3 lots. So we'll have a good idea as to what the county may.
As a CSM. So
Find out how many houses we own.
Yeah.
Or half of the house up there.
Some of your neighbors might be impacted.
You might change their mind about wanting the day off the street.
Go for it, Sharon.
Oh, I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Second from Doug. All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Opposed?
Polk. I might go a little longer.
Gotta be some more education.
4-1. 4-1.
Oh, you had to pull a general
I think
government,
we could
you
discuss.
wanted to pull a general government, last week when they were 6.5 hours.
General government one.
General government was 6. Was that, yeah, it was last week, right? Our Jones meeting and it was, yeah. Got a text from Chris at